A lot of horror movies are legitimately scary, but in some cases, the events that took place on the sets of certain horror movies were more terrifying than the movies themselves. A number of horrifying incidents have taken place on the sets of some of the most successful horror movies of all time, before, during, or shortly after filming. Whether these incidents were fatal accidents, cruel twists of fate, or some sort of evil curse still remains debatable. Perhaps a good place to start would be the Amityville Horror House, whose events may start to seem even scarier when you learn that horrors also took place on the sets for both the 1979 movie and the 2005 remake. The first Amityville movie starred James Brolin, who wasn't originally eager to take on the role, but eventually he accepted it because of something strange that happened. While reading the script one morning and getting to a scary section of the story, a pair of the actor's pants suddenly fell off a hanger, causing him to literally jump out of his chair in fright. James of course saw this as a sign that he needed to take the role, and the rest was history. Fast forward to the 2005 remake, with Ryan Reynolds taking on the part that was originally played by James Brolin. During filming, Ryan Reynolds, along with other cast members, claimed that every morning at exactly 3:15 a.m. they would wake up. The reason why that's terrifying is because 3:15 a.m. was the exact time that Ronald DeFeo murdered his entire family in the house. And it becomes a whole lot more creepy. At one point during filming, there was also an actual dead body that washed up near the filming set in the boathouse in the backyard of the house. Actors and crew members always suspected that there was an otherworldly presence during the filming of the movie. Whether they were right or just overly paranoid, who knows. The 2012 film The Possession is an unconventional horror movie that involves rabbis, Judaism, and a cursed Jewish relic called Dybbuk box that attaches itself to a young girl. A Dybbuk box is a wine cabinet claimed to be haunted by a Dybbuk, which is a malevolent wandering spirit that enters and possesses the body of a living person until exorcised. What happened on the set of The Possession left even the star of the movie, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, feeling very uneasy, and he already had a lot of experience acting in horror movies and shows under his belt. Some of the seemingly supernatural things that happened included lights exploding for no apparent reason, as well as chilly breezes wafting through closed sets for no particular reason. But the scariest incident occurred when the storage facility where all the movie props were being held caught fire and burned to the ground. A team of investigators concluded that the fire was not started from an electrical fault or arson, but the actual cause for the fire couldn't be determined. The Dybbuk box used in the movie, which played an important role in the movie, was destroyed in the fire, and the cast and crew later refused to allow the movie's producers to replace the Dybbuk box for fear that it was cursed. The Conjuring is a movie that's supposed to be based on the true story of the Perron family, who claimed to be tormented by supernatural entities in their Rhode Island home in the 70s. While several of the family members spent time on the set during filming, the mother refused to go anywhere near it, as she was convinced that several unexplained events that plagued the filming of this movie on set were proof that the spirits hadn't finished with them yet. For instance, when members of the Perron family were visiting, a furious gust of wind suddenly rose and seemed to swirl around them. However, nobody could see any movement in any of the trees just opposite them, movement you'd expect to see from any normal gust of wind. Just a couple days later, the hotel that the actors and movie crew were staying in caught fire and everyone had to be evacuated. And it doesn't end there. James Wan, the movie's director, recalls working late in his office one evening when his dog started growling at something. He would get up to investigate, but he couldn't find anything that would be antagonizing the dog. However, the dog had his sights on something across the room. It seemed he had focused on an unseen entity in one corner of the room. James took a break from working after this, having been legitimately freaked out. Vera Farmiga, who played the role of a paranormal investigator in the film, refused to take the script home with her, as she said it made her feel uneasy. She also couldn't read it at night because she became paralyzed by fear whenever she tried. After a phone call discussion with James Wan, Vera opened her laptop screen, and there were 3 digital claw marks from the upper right diagonal to the lower left. This wasn't the last time it happened though. Her next experience came a few months later, literally on the day that she completed work on The Conjuring. She returned home to upstate New York, and when she woke up the next day, she discovered what she describes as 3 claw mark bruises across her thigh. In 1983, a movie based on the Twilight Zone series was released. During filming, actor Vic Morrow was killed on the set. Deaths on movie sets have happened many times, but what makes this extra disturbing is the fact that Morrow appeared to predict his demise just a year earlier. A year before filming of the Twilight Zone movie began, Vic took out a $5 million life insurance policy on himself, explaining to friends and family members that he had a premonition something bad was going to happen to him on an upcoming movie. He had seen it in a dream he had. Unfortunately, his premonition came true, because while filming a scene involving a helicopter for the Twilight Zone, the helicopter crashed and decapitated him. 2 child actors were also killed in the accident, which prompted a lengthy investigation and court case. It was later revealed in court that the movie's concept artist unintentionally drew an identical image in his sketches to what actually happened, a burned-out helicopter in the middle of a river, essentially foreshadowing the accident. The accident led to civil and criminal action against the filmmakers, which lasted nearly a decade. One of the children's fathers testified that he heard John Landis, the director, instructing the helicopter to fly lower. All 4 parents testified that they were never told that there would be helicopters or explosives on set, and they had been assured that there would be no danger, only a lot of noise. John Landis and 4 other crew members would be found not guilty on the 3 charges of manslaughter, having been the first time a director was charged due to a fatality on a film set. The 1976 film The Omen is another horror classic following the tale of a young boy named Damien Thorne, who was replaced at birth by his father, unbeknownst to his wife, after their biological child died shortly after birth. As a series of mysterious events and violent deaths occur around the family and Damien enters childhood, they come to learn he's in fact the Antichrist. The film almost wasn't going to be completed due to an alleged curse that surrounded filming of the movie. So many horrible things happened on the set of The Omen that it can be comparable to the amount of bad things to happen in the movie. The tragedies began with the son of the lead actor Gregory Peck taking his own life as soon as filming began. The next incident was when a crew member suffered major injuries after getting into a car accident while driving to the set. But the tragedies didn't stop there. The scriptwriter's airplane was struck by lightning en route to the film's location. And if that weren't enough, an airplane in which Gregory Peck and the movie's executive producer were traveling in was also struck by lightning in a separate incident. Harvey Bernhard, the producer, was on location in Rome when he was almost hit by a bolt of lightning himself, and believe it or not, the horrible luck involving airplanes continued, and it got much worse. One day, the crew had decided to use a private airplane to get from one film location to the other. However, just after the plane took off with a number of the crew on board, something went wrong and the plane went down, crashing into a road and hitting a car, which then crashed at a high speed into another vehicle. All 11 people involved in the accident were killed. Another tragic death associated with the movie set was that of Liz Moore. John Richardson, the Omen special effects expert, was driving through the Netherlands with Liz Moore when they were involved in a terrible car accident. Richardson escaped with very minor injuries, but Moore's head was completely severed when a tire smashed into their vehicle. This incident was eerily reminiscent of a scene in The Omen, in which the character Keith Jennings, investigating Damien's supernatural origins, is decapitated by a sheet of glass that comes loose from a vehicle on a construction site. Richardson later reported that just before the crash, he passed a road sign that read Omen 66.6 kilometers. Make of that what you will, but there's no denying that it's not too far off to speculate that the production of The Omen may have been cursed. That, or it was all just an outrageous coincidence. All that can be said for sure is that The Omen is a very iconic movie, and the chilling tales that surround its production have only helped to cement that legacy. Friday the 13th has long been considered a date cursed with bad luck. It's largely been a date that people look at as an excuse to do scary-themed activities like binging scary movies. But this is the first year since 2017 that Friday the 13th falls in October. So for this video, we're looking at some of the most terrifying events that have actually taken place on the notorious day of bad luck. Tupac Shakur, better known as a stage name simply as Tupac, was an American rapper widely considered to be one of the most influential and successful rappers of all time. Tupac was arguably responsible for some of the most memorable rap verses in history. And while much of his notoriety came about after his shocking death in the mid-1990s, he's still remembered and talked about today. On the night of September 7th, 1996, Tupac was in Las Vegas celebrating his business partner's birthday. And one night while there, He attended the Bruce Seldon vs. Mike Tyson boxing match with Suge Knight at the MGM Grand. Later that night at about 11:15 p.m., while at a stoplight, a white four-door Cadillac sedan pulled up to the passenger side of Tupac's vehicle, and an occupant rapidly fired into the car. He was hit 4 times, once in the arm, once in the thigh, and twice in the chest, with one bullet entering his right lung. Tupac succumbed to his injuries 6 days later on September 13th, which was a Friday. The case went unresolved, with people suspecting his friend Suge Knight and even rapper Biggie Smalls of the murder. But recently, on September 29th, 2023, 60-year-old Dwayne Keith Davis was charged in the killing of Tupac. Dwayne is not accused of being the one to pull the trigger that night in Las Vegas, but he is, however, being accused of having been the one to call the hit on Tupac. The trial is still currently in progress. A lot of people refuse to fly on Friday the 13th. And while that may come down to pure superstition among some people, there have been a few tragedies in the air on this day. In October 1972, on Friday the 13th, a plane heading to Chile was forced to crash land in the Andes Mountains. The flight was carrying 45 passengers and crew, including 19 members of the Old Christians Club rugby union team, along with their families, supporters, and friends. 3 crew members and 9 passengers died immediately. Several more died soon afterward due to the frigid temperatures and the severity of their injuries. Survivors of the crash hid in the wreckage for warmth and were eventually forced to cannibalize and eat deceased passengers to survive. A rescue team was sent out, but the mission was called off after 10 days. However, 72 days after the crash, as the weather improved with the arrival of late spring, 2 survivors climbed a 4,700-meter mountain peak without gear and hiked for 10 days into Chile to seek help, traveling a total of 38 miles. The 2 men were able to alert authorities that there were still 16 survivors trapped in the mountains, leading to their rescue. But believe it or not, on the exact same Friday the 13th as this plane crash, the same exact date, was another plane crash that killed all 164 passengers and 10 flight crew. It was Aeroflot 217. The plane needed to land due to horrible weather conditions, but crashed upon landing in Russia just 3 miles away from the runway. The exact cause of the crash could not be determined, but it's speculated that it was largely to do with simply human error. Casualty-wise, it is one of the worst plane crashes in history. While these incidents are incredibly rare, perhaps there is a reason flights are cheaper on Friday the 13th. If you're not superstitious, perhaps it may be worth it. But now we move from the sky to the sea, looking at the Costa Concordia disaster. On Friday the 13th, January 2012, the 8-year-old Costa Cruises ship Costa Concordia just left Civitavecchia, Italy at approximately 7:18 p.m. On board were 1,022 crew members and 3,206 passengers. As the Concordia approached Giglio Island several hours later, it deviated from its standard course, moving closer to the small Tuscan island for a maritime salute, which included the cruise ship sounding its horn to show off to onlookers on the land. The Concordia had performed several in the past, but the area was known for rock outcroppings, and at some point, such a formation was noticed in the ship's path. Francesco Schettino, the captain, ordered a change in course, but allegedly due to language issues, the Indonesian helmsman steered the boat in the opposite direction. It took a little over 10 seconds to correct the maneuver, and the boat's bow ultimately swung clear, but the stern collided with the reef at approximately 9:45 p.m. The damage had been done. The Concordia's port side had suffered a 174-foot tear. This caused the ship to list and then partially sink, landing unevenly on an underwater ledge. Although a 6-hour rescue effort brought most of the passengers ashore, 33 people died, 27 passengers, 5 crew, and later a member of the salvage team. An investigation focused on the shortcomings in the procedures followed by the Concordia's crew and the actions of the captain, Francesco, who left the ship prematurely, leaving behind about 300 passengers on board the sinking ship, most of whom were rescued by helicopters or motorboats in the area. Schettino was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 16 years in prison. Despite receiving criticism, Costa Cruises and its parent company Carnival Corporation didn't face criminal charges. The total cost of the disaster, including victims' compensation, refloating, towing, and scrapping costs, is estimated at $2 billion, more than 3 times the ship's original $612 million construction cost. The cruise line offered compensation to passengers to pay for all damages, including the value of the cruise. Only 1/3 of the survivors took the offer. This remains the biggest modern cruise ship catastrophe. David Anthony McGreevy was born in Southport, England in 1951 to Bella and Thomas McGreevy. David was the second oldest of 6 children. Since David's father was a sergeant in the British Army, a lot of his childhood was spent moving from one army base to another. This could mean that one year he was being educated in an army school in England, the next in Germany. According to David's mother, living in Germany was his happiest time. David's mother Bella later said she could only remember one childhood incident of concern, as David was otherwise allegedly well behaved. In 1967, 15-year-old David left school and enlisted in the Royal Navy. However, he was dismissed from the Navy in August 1971 after being court-martialed for starting a fire that destroyed a mess wardroom. David then moved back in with his parents, but around this time his life was crumbling as his fiancée broke up with him and he was fired from several jobs. For this reason, his parents became fed up with him and kicked him out. So David turned to his friend Clive Kenneth Ralph, who let him board with he and his wife, Dorothy Elsie, and their 2 small children, Paul and Dawn. Clive and Dorothy had been school friends, and there was a 5-year age gap between them. They had married in September 1968, when Dorothy was 16 and pregnant with Paul. At the time David moved in, Dorothy was pregnant with their 3rd child, Samantha, who was born on the 14th of July in 1972. With both Clive and Dorothy busy working, David acted as a babysitter for the Ralph children. He was regarded by family and neighbors as well as the Ralphs as a person who loved children. So what would soon happen was nothing short of unexpected and horrific. On Friday the 13th, in April 1973, Elsie was picked up from work by Clive, who had left home late with the children all asleep. When the couple arrived at their home, the police were already there, and they escorted them to the police station, where they were told of the horrible truth that their children had been murdered. So what happened? Well, David was known to be a heavy drinker and sometimes a violent drunk. He had gone to a nearby pub earlier that evening with a friend, and he had 7 pints of beer. The 2 men had played cards and darts, though a small altercation took place prior to leaving the pub. Clive picked David up from the pub and brought him to look after the children, while Clive went to get Elsie from work. Sometime between 10:15 and 11:15 p.m., David, while completely wasted, became infuriated with the children, beginning with the baby Samantha, who had been crying for her bottle. David violently killed the 3 children, each in a different yet brutal manner. After killing the 3 children, David went down to the basement and retrieved a pickaxe to further mutilate their bodies. David was arrested by police at 3:50 a.m., walking on a road near the Ralphs' home. Upon his arrest, David initially denied any responsibility, but several hours later, he admitted to the murders, with his only explained reasoning disgustingly being simply that the baby was crying. David was sentenced to multiple life sentences with minimums of 20 years, and in prison he was subjected to frequent abuse by other prisoners, and he spent most of his 45 years behind bars in protected conditions. In December of 2018, a parole board cleared David for release, declaring that he had changed significantly and he was no longer a risk. There's bound to be anywhere from 1 to 3 Friday the 13ths each year. If you are superstitious and choose to be more low-key on this inevitable date in an attempt to escape any bad luck, you may end up like Daz Baxter. On Friday the 13th in 1976, Daz decided to just stay in the bed for the day to avoid anything bad happening, only to be killed when the floor of his apartment block collapsed under him. There's countless other stories and examples of misfortune and downright tragedy that's happened on Friday the 13th, but this could be said for literally every other date on the calendar. At the end of the day, maybe it's just another day. ruthless, young murderer that she was. Elizabeth's body was found in a shallow grave, and it was 6-year-old Emma Bustamante who lived across the woods looking for Elizabeth to come play. But at 6 o'clock, Elizabeth hadn't made it home. It was later found out she was allegedly diverted by Emma's half-sister Alyssa, who called Elizabeth on her cell phone and redirected her back to Alyssa's house. But the most disturbing finding in the room was Alyssa's diary. The diary entry truly painted the terrifying picture of a 15-year-old girl named Sabrina was home alone one night when there was a knock at her front door. Her parents weren't supposed to be back until the following Monday, and she wasn't expecting any guests. She went to the front door to ask who's there, and an unfamiliar male voice said back, "Sabrina, there's been an accident. Your father's in the hospital." At first, Sabrina was about to open the door, but stopped herself and asked first, "Who is this?" The voice on the other side said, "It's a friend of your father." Sabrina asked what her father's name was, and the man responded correctly. Still showing caution, Sabrina went to call her father as the man at the door repeatedly knocked. When Sabrina's father picked up, sounding completely fine, that's when she knew. Sabrina's father was perfectly fine. There was no accident. The knocks had stopped, and Sabrina's father called the police, but the unknown man was gone. Whoever it was someone who had some kind of intel on the family, from their names down to the fact that Sabrina was alone. The family never found out who the man was. The first haunted house on this list is Dead of Night. Dead of Night was an attraction run by the Chamber of Horrors on Long Island, New York that closed in 2015. It was regarded as one of New York's most extreme haunted houses, and it had one of the most horrifying haunt openings many had ever seen. Everyone waited in lines, listening to a calming pre-recorded message saying, "We are here for your protection.
Everything will be okay. You are safe. We are here to protect you and care for you. We love you. Nothing is real. All is well."
Which was interrupted at intervals by an air raid siren and men in gas masks and suits who each grabbed an unsuspecting patron and dragged them into the attraction. However, you'd be lucky if you were dragged in. Some people were zipped into body bags and some were thrown over actors' shoulders and carried in. The attraction opened with this very strong abduction scenario. Then the focus shifted to humiliation, which included the smearing of strange substances on patrons' faces and even hitting people in the face with large and painfully heavy objects. Dead of Night has been discontinued from the Chamber of Horrors, but people to this day still hope to see it return. In Chicago, Illinois, there's a haunted house called Miasma, which is just as extreme, if not more extreme, than Dead of Night. Miasma is restricted to those 18 and older, and patrons may only enter alone. Patrons will be restrained, blindfolded, smeared with blood, endure heavy physical contact, and more. It's invite only, however, and patrons who receive an invite commonly describe the instructions in the email to be very vague but clear, and that was to not share the location of where they're going with anyone, to show up alone, and do not show up late. If the instructions were ever disregarded, the experience would end. All guests are asked to refrain from sharing details of the experience, making it harder to get many details about what goes on inside. But some patrons have described their experiences to involve physical pain, often leaving with claw marks on their skin, psychological torture, emotional distress, and a lot of violence. Miasma can be very physically demanding, forcing patrons to sometimes crawl through tight spaces. One patron said she at one point forgot she was in a haunted house and tapped out when it started to feel like she was genuinely in a life or death situation. The location isn't even revealed to guests until 24 hours prior, and allegedly the location always changes. Scarehouse the Basement. Underneath the regular, tamer attraction known as Scarehouse in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, used to lie what was known as the basement at Scarehouse, which was a much more intense, immersive, and interactive experience than that of the one upstairs, and it was held inside a nearly 100-year-old historic and apparently actually haunted building. It's been closed since COVID, but it's rumored to be returning soon. You may enter in pairs or alone, though odds are not many people will be entering this place alone. The actors in this haunted house are incredibly convincing, and there's a lot of improvisation and dialogue as you make your way through each scene of what's basically your own personal real-life horror movie. It's not possible to make it from start to end without coming into contact and having to deal with the actors stopping you and messing around with you. There's extreme physical contact, sexual undertones, real electric shock, religious themes, very tight spaces, and much more. Like most attractions I'll talk about in this video, you must sign a waiver before entering. The basement can get so disturbing that the attraction appropriately has a safe word to yell out if a patron happens to feel violated or too uncomfortable. The Cult was an attraction located in North Conway, New Hampshire. The Cult had been called the ultimate in terror, only for die-hard fans of true horror, for those who want the experience of real-life terror to test your fears. It was an hour-long attraction and patrons had to walk through alone. Absolutely no groups allowed. Going through it, you would encounter violent situations, and the actors would lay hands on you many times. As the nervous patrons meet a man before entering the attraction who asks if they have any problems with darkness, heights, claustrophobia, eels, rats, bugs, needles, or being fully submerged in water, most of the patrons were already nervous of what they were getting themselves into. Patrons were given a red card on a lanyard. If one decided the experience was too much, they would give up their safety pass and it would be over. During the experience, patrons would be asked to step into a chairlift that led to a dirt path, which would then lead to a cabin where they would meet a man who would shove them into a booth, yell at them, spray them with unknown liquids, throw a bag over their heads, and then carry them outside, where the simulated torture continued. As patrons continued on, it only got worse. Throughout the attraction, patrons would encounter live animals, for example being forced to have snakes or cockroaches crawl on them, forced edibles, for example being forced to drink what the actors would claim as animal urine, extreme violence, and much more. The Cult has been closed since 2013. The Blackout Haunted House was an attraction that had two locations, one in New York and one in California. It featured extreme violence, full frontal nudity, forced edibles, submersion in water, physical contact, and patrons had to enter alone. Patrons were abducted in vans, waterboarded, and even rolled naked in a sheet of plastic and forced to walk barefoot down a hallway. Said hallway would lead to a scene with a horrifically tall figure and frail woman, and if I described the scene, this video would probably get age restricted. As a patron would pass, the tall man would stand up, exposing his body, and then threaten to make physical contact with the patron. Blackout overall relied on darkness, loud noises, violence, and sexual situations to terrify its customers. Until around 2015, it had been a solo-only experience, but starting in, I believe, 2016 or 2017, patrons were allowed to enter in groups. It seems Blackout hasn't been open for the past 2 seasons. Freakling Brothers Victim Experience 3 is a Las Vegas attraction featuring extended submersion in water, electric shock, and extreme physical contact. The Victim Experience is extremely intense, and you must go through alone. One patron said he watched a camouflaged attacker appear out of nowhere, grab his colleague by the foot, then knock her down and drag her down a long hallway as she screamed. He was left alone in the darkness until the attacker came back for him and threw him over his shoulder. Patrons will experience electric shock at some point, as well as the feeling of near drowning as they're submerged underwater for extended periods of time. As the title of the attraction suggests, once you enter, you are a victim. You will experience pain and you will be tied up, and you may be carried and thrown. Freakling Brothers actually run 3 haunted houses every year: Castle Vampire, Circus of Horrors, and Gates of Hell. The Gates of Hell became one of the first haunted houses in the country to be R-rated due to graphic content and their requirement of patrons to be over 18 and sign a waiver. The Victim Experience takes place in the Gates of Hell attraction, and it simulates what it would be believed to be like to die and actually go to hell. Without giving too much away, victims are put in several scenes where they're touched, forced to get down on their knees, and subjected to things that anyone would find uncomfortable. The Raven's Nest was one of the lesser-known extreme haunted houses, and it's been closed since 2009. It had been closed after it was deemed as too extreme by the town. Raven's Nest featured actors who were paid to induce pain on the patrons, as well as other humiliating methods of torture. The owner, Mike McNair, would hire mostly larger and more intimidating actors who would be capable of easily picking up, tying, or shoving patrons. Visitors would also be kicked to the floor and forced to do things like lick the ground, eat disgusting foods and liquids off the floor, and even have actors try to induce vomiting in the patrons. The attraction also played with claustrophobia, having patrons crawl through air vents filled with real cockroaches and spiders, as well as constant tight and cramped rooms and pathways. There was no safe word, which may have been a small factor in the eventual closing of the Raven's Nest. Many of you definitely have heard of this last one, McCamey Manor. This San Diego attraction, if it could even be called that, shouldn't even be in the same category as regular haunted house attractions. This place tops the list because it tends to use extreme scare tactics that are off limits to professional attractions. It also can't be said that what goes on in this place is safe. Participants are covered in blood, forced to eat disgusting things, threatened with power tools, stuffed in a clothes dryer, submerged in water for extended periods, physically assaulted, and even given an unwanted haircut. Participants often leave covered in blood, commonly their own, and so far nobody has made it through to the end. There used to be no safe word, and they would only pull the plug when medically necessary. This place plays with people's fears of claustrophobia with tight spaces and corridors, people's fears of spiders with restrained victims having up to or even more than 4 tarantulas crawling over their faces, people's fears of clowns, and just about anything else you could think of. Perhaps one of the more shocking parts is that the experience can go on for up to 10 hours, obviously a big contributor to why nobody's made it through to the end yet. For a long time the place didn't have a safe word, and Russ, the owner, only added one after he was told he legally needed to. But even with this safe word, apparently the torture can go on for many people who repeatedly use the safe word, rendering it basically useless. McCamey Manor also garnered a lot of criticism regarding the $20,000 cash prize that they promised to anyone who can make it through to the end, with a lot of people believing they simply wouldn't allow anyone to win, because oftentimes the workers will decide for the patrons that they're done, even if the patron wants to keep going. McCamey Manor is self-described as a place for extreme horror lovers only, who wish to experience what true terror and gross-out torture feels like. But apparently there are a lot of people who wish to experience it, as there's a waiting list of more than 20,000 people. There's currently a Change.org petition to close down McCamey Manor for good, with over 180,000 signatures. Thousands of people shun this place for claiming to be a haunted house attraction, when they believe it's simply a torture chamber under disguise. Rush's 40-page waiver is also very questionable, and he apparently misspells the word liable multiple times to attempt to make certain points of the waiver void. Whatever your thoughts on this place are, anyone would admit it's the definition of a horror attraction that takes it way too far. This is a part 2 to the recent video I did of the scariest things to happen on horror movie sets. One of the movies on that list was The Conjuring, and coincidentally, the first movie on this list will be Annabelle, a movie that takes place in the same universe as The Conjuring. The first spin-off film was released in 2014, and was directed by John R. Leonetti, who claims to have experienced not one, but 2 supernatural occurrences while on set. The first came when he claimed to have seen 3 fingers drawn through dust on set multiple times, which is disturbing because the demonic doll the movie is named after has 3 fingers. The second came when they shot their first scene with the demon actor in all his makeup. They were filming in an old apartment building near Koreatown, Los Angeles, when the demon actor went up the elevator and headed to where the other actors were. But as he was walking down a hallway, a giant glass light fixture fell on an actor's head who was playing a janitor. To make matters even creepier, in the script, that same hallway is where the demon kills the janitor, and the creepy on-set occurrences of the Conjuring universe don't end there. Corin Hardy, who directed The Nun, says that during production, he saw 2 men in a room he was filming in at a castle in Romania. He assumed they were just crew members. After completing the take, he turned to the men, but they were gone. To make things freakier, they would have had to pass him to leave the room. The 1982 movie The Poltergeist is a movie that is rumored to have been cursed. It's believed that this curse started after Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper decided to use real skeletons during a scene where Jobeth Williams' character falls into a swimming pool filled with skeletons, which unbeknownst to the cast, the skeletons were actually real, since using real ones would be cheaper than buying fake ones at the time. The majority of the fuel for the alleged curse stems from the deaths of multiple cast members. In total, 4 cast members died during and soon after the filming of the series. Carol Ann Freeling, the young protagonist of the trilogy, was played by Heather O'Rourke. and she was only 6 years old when the first Poltergeist film was released. Sadly, she was misdiagnosed with Crohn's disease in 1987, and the following year, she got sick again and was misdiagnosed with simply having the flu. But one day later, she collapsed and suffered a cardiac arrest. She died that day during an operation to correct a bowel obstruction. Dominique Dunn, who played the original older sister Dana Freeling, met an equally tragic and unforeseen fate. In November of 1982, Dominique's ex John Sweeney, who she had recently cut ties with, showed up at her house pleading for her to take him back. When she refused, he grabbed her neck and choked her until she was unconscious, leaving her to die in her driveway. Sweeney was sentenced to a horrendously lenient 6.5 years in prison, but was released after only 3 years and 7 months. Julian Beck played the evil preacher Cain from Poltergeist 2. In 1983, Julian had been diagnosed with stomach cancer, which took his life soon after he finished work on the second installment of the series. The same film was met with further tragedy after Will Sampson, who played Taylor the Native American shaman, died after undergoing a heart-lung transplant, which had a very slim survival rate. Poltergeist remains a movie with one of the highest amount of tragedies to hit its cast members. Heather O'Rourke was believed to have haunted the set of another movie though, the 1990 film Ghost. Not as much a horror movie, just a movie about the afterlife, but some believe there may have been a real supernatural presence on set. The movie involved Paramount Studios' Stage 19, where the sitcom Happy Days was filmed, a sitcom that Heather starred in 12 episodes for. Workers from the stage have experienced inexplicable power outages and have heard laughter late at night, laughter reminiscent of Heather. One night shift security guard who worked Stage 19 told about the paranormal activities that go on at the studio. The security guard claimed that almost every night he would hear running and laughing on the catwalk above the set, which is where Heather liked to play when she was on the set for Happy Days. The security guard also told that sometimes workers would see the little girl playing on the stage. When asked what they do when they see her, the security guard replied that they usually just tell her to leave and she runs off. On the set of Ghost was no different, as multiple crew members have claimed to hear the young girl running around in the catwalks above the stage and laughing. The Exorcist is undeniably one of the most well-known horror movies of all time, having become a household name. But lesser known is the fact that it's also notorious for having a supposedly haunted set. One of the eeriest examples is that the set of the McNeil's house caught fire. The Exorcist was faced with multiple production delays, but the first was by far the worst. The set for Regan's family home burned down in 1972 after a bird flew into the circuit box. The only part of the set that survived was the bedroom where the exorcisms would take place, with the chances of that being very slim. This set production of the movie back significantly, and led to shooting taking over a year. After the incident, a real priest was called in to bless the set. During filming, Ellen Burstyn, who played the mother, Chris McNeil, suffered a spinal injury while being hoisted around on a harness. She claims to have been screaming to turn the cameras off and to stop pulling her, which was all dismissed or ignored. She was left on crutches for the rest of the production.
I had a rig around my midriff with a wire coming out the back, and the stuntman was pulling me too hard. I can get hurt. And Billy said, well, it has to look real. I said, I understand, but I'm telling you I could get hurt. And the stuntman was standing there listening to this, and Billy said to him, okay, don't pull her so hard. But as I turned away, I felt them exchange a look. You see me hit and you see me reach for my back. I screamed in horrendous pain. Billy motioned to Owen to tilt the camera down on me.
The moment she fractured her lower spine was actually the footage that's in the movie, and the screams you hear in the movie are not acting, rather actual cries of pain, but the crew assumed she was only acting. But the real curse of the movie would be the deaths linked to the movie. They included Jack McGowran, who played the film director Burke Dennings. Ahead of the film's release, Jack tragically died from complications related to influenza. Vasiliki Maliaros, who played Father Damien Cara's mother, also passed away that same year before The Exorcist was released, reportedly dying of natural causes. Both of their characters in the movies also died. During the production, a number of the cast and crew, including Linda Blair, who played Regan, and Max von Sydow, who played Father Merrin, also lost family members, and the son of Jason Miller, who played Father Karras, had a near-fatal motorcycle accident during filming. The 1968 film Rosemary's Baby follows a failing actor who agrees to give up his wife's womb to Satan so he could have a taste of fame. It was an instant hit, but the satanic overtones of the film have led people to believe the film had been cursed, and a number of the cast and crew had suffered horrible fates because of it. To start, the composer for the soundtrack of the movie, Krzysztof Komeda, died in 1969 after falling off a rocky slope at a party. He had entered a coma for 4 months until passing away. This is very similar to the death of the character Hutch in Rosemary's Baby, but if anybody were to have been hit the hardest by the alleged curse, it would have to be the film's director, Roman Polanski. Initially, he wanted to include his wife Sharon Tate in the film as Rosemary, but was overruled by the producer Robert Evans, who fought to cast Mia Farrow. Sharon was instead cast as an unnamed background character in a single party scene. A year after the film was released, Sharon and some of her friends were staying in a rented house in Los Angeles when Tex Watson and some girls from the Manson family broke in. The Manson family was a gang or cult led by Charles Manson that was active in California in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Tex Watson and the girls killed Sharon and all of her friends, inflicting more than 100 piercing wounds total among the 4 victims. Sharon Tate was 8 months pregnant when it happened. The alleged curse of the movie doesn't stop there, though. The Dakota is a famous building in New York, which served as the exterior for the apartments in Rosemary's Baby. But little did a lot of people know that it was the site of John Lennon's murder. The Dakota's Gothic style was a perfect choice for the movie, as it's exactly what you'd expect the home of witches to look like. The producer Robert Evans claimed that the whole time he felt uncomfortable in and near the building while on set. After the film was released, one of the producers, William Castle, was hit with kidney stones, and he claimed that during surgery, he began to hallucinate scenes from the film and even shouted, "Rosemary, for God's sake, drop that knife." He later admitted in his autobiography that he was overall very frightened of Rosemary's Baby. Thought squatting behind a gravestone in a cemetery could be so comforting. We saw a group of 4 or 5 cloaked figures circling the property. There was a well-known mansion at the top of a hill. It was especially creepy because it stood at the edge of a massive cemetery. Chaz and I looked down at the rock that had just landed on the gravel in front of us. The exact same rock Chaz had just thrown. He flung the door open. Before I could even see anything, I was struck by the smell that made me take a few reactionary steps backward. It was disgusting. It smelled like death and rot. The sight was even worse than the smell. We found ourselves staring at a tiny room, the floor of which a white pentagram was painted. There were a few unlit candles and a closet door that we didn't open. The smell seemed to be emanating from that closet. I looked down the staircase and saw 2 cloaked figures looking back up at me. And the second I made it onto the roof, I heard the door forcefully open. "They went that way," yelled a freakishly deep voice. If there's one thing I've learned from doing these Ring videos, it's that having a drugged up person ringing your doorbell at off hours in the night is more likely than I would have ever thought. In this video, a confused looking man approaches a random porch holding what appears to be a plastic bag and a roll of toilet paper. Right from the moment he gets on the porch, you can tell something is off by his nervous, almost twitchy behavior. It appears the man could possibly be on meth or some other hard drug. When the homeowner answers through the closed door, the man clearly has a hard time figuring out how to identify himself. And when his face gets close to the camera, you can see how dilated his pupils are, confirming he's definitely under the influence of drugs.
This is, my name is James.
When the homeowner asks who he's looking for, pay attention to the name he gives.
Who are you looking for? Sosa. Who? Sammy.
The first name he gives is Sosa, and then Sammy. Sammy Sosa, like the baseball player. It might have been the first name he could think of while trying to come up with a fake friend he was looking for.
What's your name?
James.
And who are you looking for?
No, a friend of mine.
No friend of yours lives here, buddy. And I got a Glock over here ready for you. So if you don't get the fuck off my porch, I'm going to unload it on your fucking face. Get the fuck off my porch.
Sorry.
The reason why he was trying to get into the house is anybody's guess, which is perhaps the scariest part of situations like this. The homeowner handled it perfectly by communicating through the door before opening it, and after catching on to the man's suspicious behavior, he made the man on his porch aware of the fact that he had a gun and was willing to use it. Even if he didn't actually have a gun, the threat was still an effective way to get the man away from his front door. This next one is really disturbing. The person who uploaded this video is neighbors with the actual would-be victim. In the video caught by the Ring camera, 3 armed, masked men are seen approaching the front door to the house. The one in front armed with what appears to be an assault rifle. The masked man who approached the door keeps trying to block the view of the camera with his glove. Though there's no sound, it seems they're contemplating continuing their attempted break-in due to the doorbell camera. Based on body language, it appears the one with the assault rifle is apprehensive, but one of his accomplices motions for him to go back to the door multiple times. Since the camera was covered by the person's glove for most of the footage, we can't see what exactly they were doing for most of it, but luckily the homeowner didn't answer the door, and the 3 armed men were not able to enter the house. The following footage is viewer submitted. In the video, there's a man standing there in front of the house, cursing, seemingly talking to himself for 10 to 15 minutes. Without a little background context, it wouldn't exactly be unsettling per se, but when you learn why the man is standing there, it becomes a little more uncomfortable. A family member of the homeowner was mauled by a pack of dogs and bitten at least 12 times. The man who owned the dogs came to their house and stood on the front step muttering and cursing for 15 minutes until the police came.
Star Wars people, like, they don't even get that shit. They don't understand the flicks they watch and shit, how the people fucking move. Never had a problem with her, never had no issues. I never denied that shit, that the dog fucking bit her or nothing. Never denied none of that crap. Never denied none of that. But there they were. And then her too, the damn neighbor fucking saying out there in her, when the fuck out there in that neighbor, she's idiotic, man. And fucking white people too, like, it's dumb. It's fucking dumb. They're gonna put all the dogs to sleep over a fucking dog bite. A dog bite. A freaking dog bite. When the hell did I can threaten her? When the hell did I even make, like, she thinks I don't know where she lives. I've been knowing. I've been knowing.
The man seemed unstable just from the video alone, not even factoring in the fact that he owned a pack of untrained, aggressive dogs. This one is a great example of why situational awareness is so important. A couple's Ring doorbell video caught a duo of wigged, armed aggressors who had been following them home. The couple said they were walking home when a man and woman started following them all the way to their front door, where the male aggressor pointed a gun at the back of their heads. Luckily, the couple hurried in and slammed the door shut first thing, and the wigged aggressors turned and ran towards their getaway vehicle, laughing. Minutes after the aggressors sped off, they robbed another person at gunpoint, this time successfully. Luckily, only one day after the video was released to the media, a person who recognized the male gunman turned him in and he was arrested, though his name hasn't been released to the public. If the couple had not immediately gone inside and slammed the door, who knows what may have happened. This next one is an example of how just the presence of a doorbell camera can be a deterrent. Here we see a man in an apartment complex going up to somebody's door pretending to be police so that the person on the other side would open up. Whether he knew the people who lived there or not is unknown, but obviously whatever would have happened if the door was opened wouldn't have been good.
Police!
As soon as he glances over to the camera, you can see the expression on his face that says it all. and a couple seconds later, he leaves, and it sounds like he says, "Oh shit, I'm in the wrong one."
Oh shit, I'm in the wrong one.
Which my take on it would be he realized what he just did was all on video, so to play it off or give himself some sort of out, he thought by saying he's at the wrong room on video would somehow save himself from possible incrimination. This one is really upsetting, but thankfully no one got hurt. On September 14th of 2022, two armed masked men entered the home of an elderly couple in Virginia and ordered them into a closet where they would be forced to wait while the two robbers stole their valuables.
Get in the crib. Don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. Y'all get in the closet. Get in the closet right now. Get in the closet. I'm not fucking playing. Get in the closet right now. Get in the closet. Hurry up. Get up. Get up. Get up. Get up. Get up. Hurry up. Get up. Hurry up. Get up.
But if you listen closely, you can hear the elderly woman tell the robbers that her husband had hip surgery as they were ordering him to hurry up and get up. And then the old man himself says it as he struggles to get up and make his way to the closet door.
Hurry up. Get up.
Once the couple's in the closet, the robbers soon leave as one carries out a safe while the other grabs a wallet and the couple's phones. There were apparently tens of thousands of dollars in that safe belonging to someone who was staying with the couple. Police identified the two suspects as Mitchell Boney Jr., who was 25, and Tyree DeMont Boney Jr., who was 22. Mitchell actually turned himself in and was charged with armed burglary, use of a firearm, abduction, and conspiracy to commit a burglary. Tyree is still allegedly on the run. Perhaps the scariest part of this is that they clearly knew where the safe was. Tyree wasted no time going straight for where the safe was. This means anyone who was in the house, such as a home repairman, home healthcare worker, or anyone, could have seen the safe and relayed this information to other people, which is why you should always be careful of who's in your house and what they see. This is a part 3 to the scariest things caught on doorbell cameras. And once again, by the end of the video, you may consider getting one yourself. In this footage that a viewer sent me, a person can be seen crouch walking towards his front door through his doorbell camera. The person was wearing a hat, face mask, and sunglasses, allowing none of his face to be seen. After trying to open the front door and failing, the person starts to fiddle with the doorbell, noticing it's a video doorbell, so he probably tries to take it off. What likely happened was that when he realized that he couldn't get the doorbell unmounted without a special screwdriver, he started to hold his hand in front of the camera after ringing the bell. The viewer told me that this happened at 2 in the morning, and so when he heard his doorbell and ring notification go off, he instantly went to his phone to check who was at the door, only to see exactly what you're seeing. The man then walks past the doorbell to the side of the house, and by this point, the homeowner was on the phone with 911 reporting the incident. While on the phone with 911, the homeowner heard the doorknob to the side entrance door being fiddled with, and this was a door that he had been known to leave unlocked accidentally from time to time. However, luckily on this night, that wasn't the case. Since the intruder couldn't simply walk in through either door, he started to say hello repeatedly through the door, in an off-putting tone that sounded so overly friendly that it was creepy. The 911 operator told the homeowner not to open the door or to even acknowledge the person. The person would then start to bang on the door for a few moments until seemingly giving up. The police showed up but couldn't help out much based on the video. Later that night, the homeowner received another notification that there was movement at his front door. When he checked the video feed, he couldn't see anyone. He still has no idea who was under that mask and glasses. This following footage was also captured by a viewer's doorbell camera at their old house, which is still active while he tries to sell it. One morning at around 4:30 a.m., his cameras detected a man running from across the street from his neighbor's home, across his front yard, and up to his front door. The man was naked, with one of his hands blocking his privates. The footage was caught from two angles. He was arrested a short while later by local police, and was apparently high on crystal meth, and he had removed his clothing due to a fear of snakes being inside of his clothes, and he was running around the neighborhood knocking on doors and ringing doorbells yelling for help. The neighborhood is reportedly pretty quiet. The homeowner never had any sort of issues before this. In his words, he ran up my front yard onto my front porch and rang the doorbell. For the next minute or so, he was ringing the doorbell and knocking while pacing back and forth. He looked panicked, and his expression drifted from someone in pain to a look of pure crazy, and at one point said he needs help. After that, he ran off back into the night. The guy was picked up by an officer around 5 a.m. not far from his house. And this footage is why you always check who's at your door before you open it, especially if you have a doorbell camera. If someone who you don't know shows up to your door late at night, don't open it. Unfortunately, in this video, that's exactly what this homeowner did. Around 10 p.m. one night, a suspicious-looking hooded man approaches the front door of a random house rather quickly and aggressively, and he right away tries to open the door. After realizing it's locked, he goes to ring the doorbell. Disappointingly, the homeowner opens the door rather quickly instead of checking who's at his door at this hour first.
Hello. Hi. How far are you, sir? Who are you? Aaron, how are you? Good. You need to leave. How far? Out there. What's the stairs going? What? What's the stone stairs here? Come on, where are you going? What's the stairs here? Goodbye, you.
The homeowner was likely too trusting a person, which put him in danger. Even his initial hi to the stranger at his door sounded overly friendly, considering the man was already creeping in the second the door was opened.
Hello. Hi.
The homeowner pushes the man out, causing him to punch the glass of the door before it's even fully closed. The man then stands there for another minute or so, fiddling with the doorknob a few times, though the rest of the footage is cut off. The dialogue is near impossible to completely make out, but it seemed the man was under the influence of drugs or alcohol, and was likely attempting to burglarize the home. The homeowner called the police, but the man was gone by the time they arrived. It's unknown if he was found. This image was posted from the owner of a Ring camera in a Facebook group to caution others. The woman warned in her post to beware a strange man wearing a white mask lurking around the neighborhood after her camera caught him trying to look into her home a little after 10 p.m. one night. The woman said, "I just want my neighbors to be aware and safe. Please, if possible, share this post. Screenshots are welcome." Not sure what colors he was wearing, but had a hoodie and jeans on. The disturbing picture shows the man in the mask looking directly into the camera. This is exactly the type of image that you'd never want or expect to see come up on your doorbell camera footage, but it's also the kind of image that would make you sure as hell grateful that you had one. Neighbors of the woman also reported seeing the man walking around and approached their front doors. Thankfully, no one opened the door to him. On May 1st, 2020, around 9:40 p.m., around the beginning of the COVID lockdown, a 45-year-old dad, Raymond Hawkins, opened the door to who he believed to be a delivery driver dropping off a parcel. Due to new methods of delivery at the time because of COVID, the alleged delivery driver backed away from the front door to supposedly keep his distance and claimed he needed to take a picture of the package at the doorstep, something many delivery drivers must do for more expensive packages.
foot on your door and take it because coronavirus.
At this time, the father had his guard down due to the fact that he had no idea the man in front of him wasn't a delivery driver, and that he was in fact part of a gang that was about to storm into his house, all of whom armed with knives. Christopher Sargent, the fake delivery driver, lunges at Raymond with a knife and attacks him when he goes to pick up the package, while 3 other masked men follow from behind. Muffled cries come from the house, as there's a struggle between Raymond, his wife, and the robbers. The robbers are only in the house for a few moments before being seen fleeing the house with thousands of dollars worth of items. Raymond and his son suffered non-life-threatening injuries, while his sons were described to be worse. 2 of the culprits would be arrested, Anthony Lascelles and Christopher Sargent, who were both charged with aggravated burglary and possession of a knife. The other 2 culprits were never found. One thing that can be learned from a lot of these videos is that some people will go to crazy lengths to trick other people. The major red flag in this case was that the supposed delivery was taking place at 9:40 p.m., which is way past the time any notable delivery company will deliver packages, usually the latest being 7 p.m. On April 10th, 2020, this was the footage taken by the Ring doorbell of a viewer's friend Kayla in a small California town. Kayla was being stalked by her crazy former friend Thomas, who became obsessed with her over time and would constantly express his alleged love for her, despite her telling him numerous times that she didn't feel the same way. The week that this footage was taken, Kayla was bombarded with texts and voicemails from Thomas. And as you can see if you care to pause the video and read some of the texts, it starts with what seems to be Kayla accepting his apology for his behavior. However, as the texts and voicemails just keep coming in, she begins to realize how crazy he may be. What you're about to hear are some audio clips from different voicemails he's left on her phone after she had stopped answering him.
Hey, Kayla. Listen, I want to make sure you're not too worried about what happened at the party last week. I had an amazing time. And I think you're goddamn beautiful. And I'm sorry I got so sick. I wanted to come be with you while you were getting ready, and I was just so totally out of it. And I'm sorry. God, I think I might love you, and I'm sorry. And I'm gonna give you some space. And I want to be there for you and be there for you. And I can't get you out of my fucking head. And I want to be there for you. God damn it. So fucking. God damn it. And all I can do is think of you and want to be with you. And I want to be with you. I want to be your Flynn Rider, and I want to be everything to you. God damn it, babe. You're fucking amazing. You are amazing. You're my knight in shining armor, and I'm so fucking terrified of you. And God, I love you so much. So much. Please call me back. No, I lied. I'm not going to give you some space. I'm sorry. I'm coming over. I know you're up and thinking about me. I'm sorry. I'm fucking, God, I'm not sorry. God, I'm coming over. Fucking, I'm already driving. I've been driving the whole time. God damn it. I'm coming over. Fucking, I'm not going to give you space. I know you called me back. I saw that. Yep, I know you're up thinking about me. God damn it. Oh, God damn it. I'm coming over. One way or another, I'm coming over. Fucking whatever, however, whatever. God, I'm coming over. I'll see ya. I'll be there in like 10 minutes or whatever. I'm in whatever. I'm coming over right now. Damn it. I'll see ya. Bye. I love you. Rough road. Oh, it's a rough road. Fuck you, Kayla. I am fucking crazy. God damn it. Fuck you. I'll drive into the field. God damn it. Things like that, son. Fuck you. Fuck you, Kayla. I am goddamn crazy. I'm crazy for you. God damn it. I'll do it. I'll do it for you. I am crazy. Oh, that one could be a cop. That one could be a cop. We just don't know. All right. I'll settle. Anything for you, my queen. Anything for you. I'll settle. I'm going slow. My phone is dying anyway. I'm still going to drive by your house in the middle of the night, though. And I dare you not to have your blinds open to check. I'm crazy. Maybe you'll never know if I did it. I'll do it.
The footage of him showing up to Kayla's house was right after one of his phone calls saying he's coming over, even though it was clear by this point she wanted nothing to do with him. Eventually, Kayla and her friend Ravon would find out that Thomas wasn't even his real name. His real name is Matthew. He'd been using the fake name Thomas Castle, which was a reference to the Marvel character The Punisher. Thomas was a reference to Thomas Jane, the second actor to play the Punisher, and Castle was a reference to Frank Castle, the Punisher's last name. The fact alone that he had been using a fake name with his friend and supposed love of his life was already a huge red flag, and maybe a sign that he was hiding something in his life. The ring footage was taken at 2 in the morning, and after leaving, he would go on to send some more texts, which would progressively get angrier. 4 days after this footage was taken, Kayla and her friend went to the police and filed for a restraining order. He left her alone about a month or so after the restraining order was put into place. Kayla blocked his number and blocked him on social media, and reportedly he basically disappeared from the world, and no one knows where he is now.
I was looking for a car to buy for my son for his 18th birthday. I was searching all the typical car websites, cars.com, eBay Motors. They were all overpriced as expected. Craigslist was the only place to find an actual deal. About a week into my search, I found an 03 Toyota Camry. It had 67,000 miles, no accidents, no damage, and good condition for only $3,500. This seems like a steal for such a reliable car with such low mileage. The seller lived about 10 miles from me, which was a reasonable drive when looking for a car. I gave him a call to set up a time to come check it out. The man sounded normal on the phone. He assured me that there were absolutely no problems with the car. He introduced himself as Bob. I brought along $3,500 in cash, even though I planned on wiggling down the price as much as possible. I pulled up the dirt road to Bob's property about 15 minutes early. It was a tiny little house with a decent-sized property, only because I was a bit far from the nearest neighbors. The garage was open, so I walked over to see if anybody was inside, but except for an unusual amount of car parts, it was empty. The car was nowhere in sight. The only car on the property was an old pickup truck. I went over to the front door to check the house numbers. It was the right address. The doorbell button was missing, so I knocked on the front door. I knocked for exactly 5 minutes before deciding to give the man a call. So I dialed his number and I heard the sound of a cell phone ringing from inside the house. I was extremely confused at this point. Now I knew I had the right house. I didn't understand why, if he was home, why he wasn't answering. I decided I had to take a peek through one of the windows to see if anybody was inside. Peering through the glass, I couldn't really see much as it was pretty dark inside the house. I saw a very old-fashioned dining room set, but across from that, I saw somebody standing at the back door of the house, staring outside. I figured that must have been Bob, so I knocked on the window, but he didn't even move. There was no gate or anything to the backyard. It was just a wide open yard since this wasn't a rural area. I simply walked around the house to the backyard. I didn't understand how he couldn't hear me. When I got to the back door, I made a shocking realization. The figure standing by the door was a taxidermied human being. I ran straight back the way I came and back to my car. I looked up one last time before driving off. The blinds to the window I had peeked into had been shut, but I could see 2 of the blinds bent open. Somebody was at that window watching me. You can probably guess I had the gas pedal to the floor the whole way home. The whole situation still makes no sense. All the car parts, the fact that there was no Toyota Camry, the taxidermied human being. The fact that there was no car there leads me to believe that whoever that man wasn't planning on selling me anything. And that also leads to the disturbing thought that I was very close to becoming a lifeless statue staring out that man's back door.
In this footage submitted by Jason, something happens that if it weren't caught on dashcam, you wouldn't believe it. It was around 1 in the morning. Jason was on his way to what he thought was going to be the house of a woman he matched with on a dating app. The person had given Jason their address over the app. They had not exchanged numbers. After putting the address into his phone, he realized that not only was the address 20 minutes away, it was also in a less desirable side of town. Against his better judgment, he got in his car anyway to head to the given address, which was in a cul-de-sac. After entering the cul-de-sac, he realized all 3 houses had all of their lights out, and when he tried to message the girl he matched on the dating app, she would no longer answer. After waiting a few minutes for an answer, he realized the person had unmatched him, meaning it may have been a trick or prank, and so he turned the car around. As he was leaving the cul-de-sac, he noticed someone on the sidewalk stepping out into the street, and so he locks his doors and slows down. This is the footage captured on the dashcam. The footage is kind of grainy, so it's hard to make out some of the smaller details. But basically what happened was Jason slowed down as he saw a masked person walking into the middle of the street, immediately knowing something was off because there was nothing across the street except a busy highway. So he locks his door and comes to a stop as the person is directly in front of his car. Then the masked person reaches into his pocket, grabs a handgun that's a little hard to see in the video due to lighting, and starts running towards his driver's side door. Jason immediately steps on the gas and drives past the man, who then tries to open the door, which thankfully was locked mere seconds earlier. It's hard to see unless you pause and zoom in, but the man in the video was wearing a creepy smiling mask. The man didn't fire any rounds, but that's also under the assumption that the gun was even loaded or real. It's not that uncommon to hear about people using fake guns in scenarios like this. What was strange about this was while even though it was in a less desirable end of town, it was still a very residential block right next to a highway, so it was a slightly questionable place to pull this. However, it doesn't take a detective to put the pieces together that this was a setup through the dating app to lure some unsuspecting guy to a dead-end road in order to rob him at gunpoint or worse. According to Jason, the spot in which the man stepped into the street was out of view of any houses as it ran alongside a long fence and bushes. Jason reported the whole incident to the police, including the given address. Jason was accompanied with a police officer to knock on the door of the address in question the next day, and an older woman who claimed to live alone answered the door. She claimed she had nothing to do with it, and that's obviously pretty likely to be the truth, meaning a random person simply chose that address because the street was low-key and hidden, debatably a perfect spot to try and set somebody up. Luckily, Jason didn't decide to stay put and got away without harm, because who knows what could have happened. Before the next clip, I just want to talk about today's sponsor, Aura. I read a lot of horror stories on this channel, but a growing horror story in America that more and more people are falling victim to is identity theft, with there being a new victim every 14 seconds.
Identity theft is not a joke, Jim.
You may be unpleasantly surprised to learn how easy it is for your information like passwords to be leaked in a data breach. And with this information, hackers and scammers can gain access to a whole lot more of your information. Luckily, Aura provides identity theft protection, fraud monitoring, a VPN, antivirus software, and more all combined into one app, serving as an ideal one-stop shop. I personally have been the victim of data breaches, and because of this, a lot of my accounts have been hacked. The feeling of trying to log into my accounts only to see the passwords had been changed actually made me sick to my stomach. Some of you may even remember my Twitter account was publicly hacked like 6 years ago, and being a YouTuber that keeps most of my info on the more private side, I definitely find myself being a target of these things quite often, and Aura has been a huge help in keeping my information secure, constantly alerting me anytime my passwords are compromised. Right now, if you click the link in the description or go to aura.com/MrNightmare, you'll get a 2-week free trial, no commitment necessary. Aura also offers a 60-day money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied. If you care about your security, I do personally recommend the app. On November 23, 2016, the day before Thanksgiving, a fire began on the Chimney Tops Trail in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The fire was sparked by a group of kids playing with matches in the woods, and it was fueled by unusually high winds. Flames erupted in a remote area with steep terrain that made access to the fire difficult for firefighters. Crews spent 3 days working to create a containment area lower down the mountain. Helicopters flew overhead doing bucket drops to attempt to slow the spread of the fire. On the 4th day, winds picked up and the fire spread, but the Gatlinburg fire chief said projections showed no immediate threat to Gatlinburg. Despite the predictions, on Monday, November 28th, dry weather and extreme winds caused the fire to grow rapidly. That evening, wind gusts of up to 87 miles per hour sent embers flying into Gatlinburg, wreaking havoc on the city and surrounding communities. Town officials reported that evacuation alerts were sent out to residents' cell phones, but many residents said they never received any alerts. 14 people were killed and 191 people were injured in the fire. The flames destroyed nearly 2,500 homes and left an estimated $2 billion worth of damages. Resident Michael Luciano recorded his and his stepbrother's horrifying escape down the mountain. During the drive down, just about every single passing cabin is seen engulfed in flames.
Oh, God. We'll get out of it. Hit the gas.
I can't see.
You can see. Why is every cabin on fire? Fuck. I don't know about this. Dude, this started at Natty Branch. We're going the wrong way.
What?
Oh God, that was a beautiful cabin too. Not now.
And at multiple points, the two men find themselves stuck behind fallen trees.
Fuck, go through it. Go through it.
I can't.
I cannot be stuck. Try it on the left side where these sticks are short. Get a running start.
Even at one point getting stuck behind another driver, which happened to be an old man who rolled his window down to tell Michael that he couldn't see.
Does this motherfucker want to die here? What the f*** is wrong with you? Go! Get the fuck out of here!
The old man ended up pulling to the side and following Michael's taillights down the mountain. At certain points, it seems very likely the men aren't going to make it out alive. But by some stroke of luck, they made it to the containment area with only minor damages to their truck. Their luck didn't just end there though. Their cabin survived the fires with very little damage, despite its close proximity to the surrounding engulfing flames. While this footage can almost make you feel like you're in the truck with them, it obviously can't compare to the actual fear of being in the suffocating heat inside the truck mixed with tension of the life or death situation at hand. In this footage, a young girl who wished to remain nameless, so I'll refer to her as Amanda, was driving home from her boyfriend's house. She had just pulled out of the driveway and started heading down her boyfriend's block when a car in the middle of the road came into view. The car wasn't moving but didn't have its hazards on, so Amanda waited for a few moments until the driver in front of her lowered his window and waved for her to go around him, so she did. Upon passing the car, she quickly realized the car behind her started moving as well, which at first wasn't too weird, but it became clear very soon that the car was following her after it started making the same turns she made. She started to make as many random turns as possible, and sure enough the car behind her stayed on her tail. She then calls her boyfriend, which I muted at her request for privacy, and she explained to him that somebody was following her. He reassured her to keep calm and everything would be fine, and to just drive to the nearest police station. So she looked up the nearest police precinct, and when they were only a few blocks away from it, the car behind her turned the opposite way, likely because they knew she was going to the police station. Still on the phone with her boyfriend, She told him the car behind her turned a different direction, so her boyfriend assured her she should be fine to go straight home. Just be cautious. Amanda drove home after this, which was in the same town, so it was unlikely to be a long trip home. She even checked to make sure the coast was clear before parking her car and going inside. But later in the night, she woke up to this. Amanda heard sounds right outside her bedroom window, like someone was trying to lift it open from the outside. Once she turned the lamp on, the noise stopped. She called for her dad when she realized what was happening, and the occurrence was immediately associated with the vehicle that was following her earlier. So the family called the police to file a police report and showed them the dashcam footage of the vehicle following her. The vehicle could be identified as a BMW, and Amanda was asked if she knew anyone who owned a BMW that might want to hurt her. The only person she could think of was a guy named Christopher Crea, somebody who she blocked on social media for obsessive harassment, who happened to drive a black BMW. These were the last texts Christopher had sent to Amanda before she blocked him. Christopher happened to know Amanda's boyfriend personally through mutual friends, and through those connections, he knew where he lived, so the idea that this Christopher guy waited outside Amanda's boyfriend's house suddenly became a possibility. As an idle threat, Amanda's boyfriend sent an Instagram DM to Christopher that she was filing for a restraining order if he bothered her again, but his response was him acting confused and claiming he hadn't bothered her. Whether it was acting or not is a mystery, but nothing happens again at Amanda's house after that, so it doesn't seem too far-fetched that it could have been this Christopher guy. The following dashcam footage was taken in the vehicle of Uber driver Christina Spikuza, and I want to warn you, while there is no actual graphic footage shown, the story behind it is upsetting. 38-year-old mother of four Christina Spikuza was doing some night drives on February 10th, 2022, when 22-year-old Calvin Crew used his girlfriend's phone to order an Uber. Christina accepted the ride and picked Calvin up. He gets into the car in a sketchy mask covering his entire face except for his glowing eyes. She greets him by asking for Tanea and how are you today, but he doesn't answer either question, or if he did, it was likely an inaudible grunt. Christina was extremely polite to Calvin, even asking how his day was going a few minutes in.
Did you have a good day today?
Calvin is seen turning to check if the coast was clear, and then lifting his mask up slightly before pulling a gun on Christina and threatening her.
I'm sorry?
Keep driving.
You've got to be joking.
Keep driving.
What are you doing?
This is a gun. Keep driving.
No, it's not. Stop. Come on, man. I got a family. What are you doing?
I got a family too. Now drive.
What are you doing?
Drive.
Please stop.
Drive the car, miss.
Why
Just
are you
drive.
doing
Don't
this?
Don't make this so noticeable. Just drive.
Why are you doing this?
Just drive the car.
To where?
Complete the trip.
I cannot do that.
Complete the trip.
Why are you doing this?
Complete the trip.
Please?
He tells her to cancel the ride so that it could no longer be tracked. Not long after, he grabs her phone to gain access to her banking apps to transfer money to his girlfriend's phone.
Get off of me. Please. No.
Keep driving.
Before grabbing the dash cam and throwing it out the window, he tells her that everything will be okay if she does what he says.
That's what I said, and everything will be alright.
But that later proved to be a lie. Christina's body was discovered by an Amazon driver 2 days later, lying in the woods 50 feet off the road, with a single gunshot wound to the head. Detectives found Christina's dashboard camera along the route of her last Uber ride, and the footage provided all the evidence necessary to prosecute Calvin for her murder. Prosecutors are currently seeking the death penalty for Calvin. In 1991, a 12-year-old boy named Jared Negretti went hiking on a camping trip with his Boy Scout troop that consisted of 14 other boys. They were hiking towards the summit of Mount San Gorgonio in the San Bernardino National Forest in Southern California. Jared was on the shorter and heavier side. Around 6 p.m., 1,000 feet away from the summit, another group of hikers spotted Jared straggling behind and notified the scoutmaster at the summit. They said he was seen shortcutting the switchbacks on his way down the trail and was told not to and to stay on the trail by the other hikers. The scoutmaster, who was an experienced hiker, said he would pick up Jared on the way down. When he finally was able to descend the mountain to pick up Jared, he was nowhere to be seen. As soon as the scoutmaster realized that Jared had disappeared, he took the other scouts in his troop back to base camp and then hiked about 5 miles in the dark to get help. Sheriff's deputies, along with search and rescue teams, began searching a 130 square mile area of the San Gorgonio wilderness, a very rocky, tree-lined terrain. Within 3 days, their search was focused on a 6 square mile area where a footprint believed to match one of Jared's high-top tennis shoes was found. Searchers also discovered beef jerky and candy wrappers believed to have been dropped by Jared, and perhaps most importantly, his camera was found. On the film roll were 12 pictures. Most were landscapes taken by the boy when he was still with the troop, but the last one shows a self-portrait in which it seems he pointed the camera at his face, aided with the flash of the camera. It's possible he lost the camera when he slid down a portion of the mountainside. At least 70 officers, including some airlifted by helicopter and some on horseback, were deployed. Some of the helicopters were even equipped with infrared scanning. Over the next 2 weeks, as many as 3,000 people had logged 45,000 hours searching 50 square miles of the San Bernardino National Forest. So the question is, did he fall off the trail and slip down the mountainslide? While it's possible, it seems unlikely that his body wouldn't have been found in the immediate area around the switchbacks he was cutting down. Some people think he may have been the victim of a bear attack, but this seems unlikely as well, as there were no signs of blood, drag marks, or other evidence linked to any animal attack. Some believe he was abducted by a predator, given the mountain is well used by hikers. To this day, 3 decades later, Jared's remains have never been found. On the cold night of February 24th, 1978, 5 young men from Yuba County, California, Bill Sterling, Jack Hutes, Ted Weir, Jack Madruga, and Gary Mathias, headed to California State University to attend a basketball game. When the group of men didn't return the next day, friends and family grew concerned. What should have been a quick road trip to see a basketball game turned into a mystery that has never been solved. All 5 men suffered their own mild forms of mental issues, but they were still able to fully function in society. The men were scheduled to play in a Special Olympics basketball game of their own the next day, for which they prepared their clothes before leaving for California State University the day prior. A police search ensued shortly after they were reported missing, and a few days later, the men's car was found abandoned far from the route they should have taken to return to Yuba City. In fact, it was a whole hour in the wrong direction of Yuba City, having been driven up a winding mountain pass in the Plumas National Forest at the northern point of the Sierra Nevada. The car had a few empty food wrappers and drink bottles. Apart from that, the car was empty. The car was found in working condition. It was lodged in a snowbank with no signs of foul play. However, the car could have been easily pushed out by the 5 young men, raising more questions. For the next week or so, police and forest rangers searched the area hoping for any signs of them, but unfortunately any possible tracks of the men, or even God forbid their bodies, were covered by a passing snowstorm. Multiple sightings of the 5 young men were reported, but none led to their discovery. First, a man named Joseph Scones called police, saying he saw the group of men on the Friday they disappeared, while he was trying to push his stuck car out of the snow. Joseph suffered a mild heart attack while trying to push his car out, and when he saw flashlight beams outside his car and a small group of men, he tried to call and ask the men for help, but they suddenly disappeared as if they ignored him. A second witness said she saw 5 men in a red pickup truck on Saturday and Sunday, an hour from where the car was abandoned. She told police that 2 of the men came into her store to buy food and use the phone while the rest stayed in the truck. Their disappearances continued to baffle everybody, even more so when the snow melted months later, in June of that same year, because more questions arose. A local man noticed a broken window on a Forest Service trailer, and when police inspected it, they found the dead body of Ted Weir inside. He appeared to have died from starvation, despite having food readily available nearby in the trailer. He was wrapped in many layers of blankets, and his feet were badly frostbitten. But what makes no sense is the fireplace, which could have been easily set up and could have kept him warm, was completely untouched, and on top of that, warm snow clothes that were found in the trailer were unused by Ted. It's possible he lived up to 13 weeks after the initial disappearance. 20 miles away from where the car had been abandoned, the bones of Bill Sterling, Jack Hutes, and Jack Madruga were found not far from Ted's emaciated body, spread out from each other. They had died of hypothermia. Strangely, Gary was never found. Only his shoes were discovered in the nearby woods. To this day, no one can figure out why the group had gone in the direction they did, or why they left their perfectly functioning car, which the 5 men could have easily pushed out from the snow, only to separate from each other and eventually starve or freeze to death. On top of this, all of their families agreed that it was uncharacteristic of them to not help John Scones push his car out from the snow when he called out for help, and why Ted didn't even attempt to start a fire or the trailer's heating system, or eat the food found in the trailer, still makes no sense at all. Craig Freer of Scotia, New York, was 17 when he was last seen in June of 2004. He was a popular kid, with dimples, red hair, and a welcoming smile as he was described by friends and family. He was a star soccer player at the Scotia Glenville High School and about to be named captain of his team. Craig also picked up a part-time job, and his future was looking bright. There were a few colleges interested in offering Craig a scholarship for his athletic abilities, and one could say the world was truly his oyster. But that all changed on June 27, 2004. On that day, he walked into the woods and was never seen again. So rewinding a bit, when Craig picked up his job at the Price Chopper supermarket in Glenville, New York, his parents were proud that he'd be fitting working in with his busy schedule. On the dreaded day of Craig's disappearance, he was seen by his parents walking out of his home for what would be the last time. His parents were under the impression he was going to work. His mother Veronica had even seen him carrying his uniform with him to his car. But when she went to go shopping at the supermarket later where Craig worked, just a few hours after he left home for his shift, she was confused when there was no trace of him. Veronica learned that Craig had actually lost his job at the supermarket after 2 months of employment and had been hiding it from his parents. He had been pretending to work there for weeks after his termination, so that his parents wouldn't know he was no longer employed. It's unknown why he was fired though, likely for not showing up. Very upset with their son, Craig's parents called his girlfriend since he left his phone behind. They did not yet know that she was his ex-girlfriend. They called her to see if they knew where he was, and at first she said she had no idea, but after a second call, out of guilt, she admitted that he was with her. Veronica lectured Craig over the phone, telling him that he needed to come home right away and that they needed to talk to him. Little did they know he was visiting her because he was upset about their recent breakup. Craig said goodbye to his ex-girlfriend and left her apartment located in Scotia as well, and according to his ex-girlfriend, she watched as he walked towards his car, but then stood still for a moment, then darted off in the opposite direction, as if something had scared him and he was running away from imminent danger. However, if that were the case, it would have made more sense to drive away. Before this, he told his mother he would be home in 10 minutes over the phone, the time it would take to drive from his ex-girlfriend's to home. Around the time that call ended, Craig's dad arrived at the complex and saw his son's car was still parked outside. By 5 p.m. that day, Veronica had reported her son missing, and at first police weren't too interested, assuming it was just a normal kid running away for the day because of an argument with parents. But as hours turned into days, and when the investigators found out that he didn't have his phone or wallet with him at the time of his disappearance, they agreed something was wrong and began to further investigate. Police hit a big lead when a few teenagers came forward to tell police that they had seen Craig or someone matching his description walking along the railroad tracks behind his ex-girlfriend's apartment complex, and shortly after, he was seen entering the woods. They claimed that when they tried to call to him, he motioned for them to be quiet with his finger to his lips, and then just kept on walking, disappearing into the woods. Investigators started searching up and down the railway line with no luck. Police dogs were used while searching the woods, even checking the nearby Mohawk River, but all these searches turned up nothing, as if Craig had just vanished into thin air. Of course, after 2 decades, police investigations have largely scaled back, but in 2021, a new lead was discovered. One of Craig's co-workers at the Price Chopper supermarket told investigators that sometime between June 27th and June 2nd, 2004, he saw Craig in the passenger seat of a car traveling north on Route 50 in Glenville. According to the witness, the car stopped at the traffic lights on Sheffield Road before turning left and disappearing up the intersecting road. Craig's family is still hoping that one day they'll learn the truth about what happened to their son. For a well-liked 17-year-old with such a bright future, no one can seem to understand how or why he just vanished into the woods. And lastly, here's one many of you may have heard before, but still remains one of the creepiest national park disappearances I've ever heard. In March of 2014, two Dutch young women, Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon, went to Panama for a vacation to reward themselves for graduating. To make it a little more upsetting, the two had taken on extra shifts the month prior in order to pay for it. Reaching Panama, they soon headed for the town of Bouquet, where they were hosted by a family. Shortly after, on April 1st, 2014, Chris and Lisanne vanished as they were hiking the trails in the forest around the town of Bouquet, which in of itself was strange because they were scheduled for a tour guide by the name of Feliciano to assist them on the trails for the following day. The two women made their way for the trails, accompanied by the host family's dog named Blue. When Blue arrived back home later that evening without the girls, the family became concerned and tried contacting the mother of Lisanne, who then proceeded to try to make contact with her daughter, but to no avail. On April 2nd, the following day, Feliciano was waiting for the girls to show up for their hike, but they never arrived.
La persona que por un evento que teníamos pendiente de hacer el día miércoles a las 8 de la mañana les fui a buscar, no las encontré y ya al darnos cuenta que no habían dormido en su casa donde habitualmente estaban con la familia, al día siguiente.
He went to the home of the host family the girls were staying at, but they weren't there as well. In fact, most of the women's belongings were still there prior to their disappearances. The women did have their cell phones, but they wouldn't answer any attempted calls. As panic began to set in with everyone, the police were contacted and an extensive search began, with the help of everyone from farmers and locals to detectives, search dogs, helicopters, and more. The search lasted for 10 days, yet no trace of Chris and Lisanne were found. 2 months had passed and a local found a backpack belonging to one of the women. To everyone's shock and horror, skeletal remains were also discovered, and after DNA testing, they were shown to be matches for both women. The story doesn't end there though. While continuing the investigation, their cell phone logs were released. The two women were trying to make 911 phone calls throughout the stretch of the 10 days, but they couldn't get service. Although believed to be a possible accident of getting lost and injured in the forest, which therefore resulted in succumbing to the elements, strange discoveries were made that brought that theory into question. Inside one of the backpacks, there was a camera with 100 photos stored on the memory, taken within those 10 days of their vanishing. Most of these photos were normal, scenic pictures documenting what was supposed to be the two young women's fun vacation. The police were also able to take the pictures that the women took and match them up with their phone calls to 911. Disturbingly, cell phone data shows that only 2 hours after this seemingly happy photo was taken, they attempted to call 911. It starts to become stranger though. 10 out of the 100 pictures were taken within the 10 days. The other 90 were taken afterwards, around 1 to 4 in the morning, in complete darkness. It may be that they were taken to get some form of vision at night through the flash, but it's not been confirmed. Some believe that it wasn't even the girls that took these pictures. In one photo of a close-up of the back of Chris's head, it seems to show a wound to the right side in the temple area and blood on her hair. Lisanne may have been using the camera light to see how bad Chris's injury was. Some people believe Chris was actually deceased in this photo, and that their murderer was the one taking the photo. Disturbingly, there was a hiking shoe that still had a foot in it that belonged to Chris. Also found was a pelvic bone that belonged to Lisanne. As of right now, the accepted theory by police is that the two women went off the beaten path of the trail, and one of them was injured. Then the other woman was trying to provide help and became injured herself in the process, which then led to starvation and dehydration. But this is just a theory, and whether this is true, or if the two girls were targeted by someone out in the woods, will potentially forever remain unknown. But wait, what if the tour guide had something to do with it? A lot of people believe Feliciano had something to do with their deaths. In fact, multiple women have left reviews on the tour guide warning women not to go into the woods alone with him, as he can become very touchy-flirty, even allegedly joking with one girl that he'd chop her leg off. On top of this, Feliciano was the one to find the shoe with a foot in it behind a specific tree trunk, almost as if he knew to look there. There are a lot more details that go into this theory, but that would remain a video for a different day. For now, whether the tour guide had any part in their disappearance may forever remain a mystery, just like the rest of this case. This is a little compilation of some pretty creepy videos I found on the internet the past couple weeks. A TikToker by the name of Eon June was exploring an abandoned nursing home one night for the thrill of it, planning to post it to his TikTok. Little did he know he'd capture more than he bargained for. In the darkness, he could see a figure further down the hallway walking across, and immediately knowing it looked like a person, he turned around and left. After getting home, he tweaked the brightness of the clip, and this was what he saw. So he returned to the nursing home later that night with a friend this time, recording once again, trying to catch something else on video in that same hallway. This is how that went.
I swear I saw something down there. Zoom in a little bit more.
I'm trying to.
Right there, right there, right there. See it?
Over.
What the? Oh, what the? I saw that. That was actually a person. Bro, I'm not joking. Let's get out of here. Come on.
Hold on. Demon.
No, dude, that's actually...
Oh, yeah, now you're scared that there's...
That's actually a person.
The two are both apprehensive about moving further into the hallway where there was once again a black figure seen walking into one of the adjacent rooms out of
I
sight.
can heal him down. I'm not fucking playing.
I can't hear anything, dude.
You're an idiot.
You're fucking crazy.
No, I'm not. Guarantee you 100%. But walks past again, it's a real person. This, I'll throw it at him. Whatever it is.
As the two friends are making their way back out of the hallway, they hear a terrifying scream that barely sounds human, and the video cuts right there.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Hey, let's go.
Alright.
I know I saw something, and I know I'm not fucking crazy.
Security guards can see some pretty creepy things while working the overnight shifts. In this video, a security guard is left confused when he learns of a new employee he wasn't informed about. However, when he's shown the security footage capturing his perceived interaction with the new employee, he discovers something pretty terrifying.
Hey, watch this, y'all. This man, he called his boss asking him, why didn't y'all tell me they had a new employee, right? He constantly looking back, right? He talking to somebody, right? Just watch, this is creepy. Look, having a whole conversation with somebody, right? Saying that somebody came and he dapping that person off and everything. Now see, look, y'all see when he dapped them off, look what happened. He dapped them off. You see that shadow? And then the shadow goes over here and he pulling the chair out for him. He swore to God he sat there and had a whole conversation with this person. He moved over talking to him and everything.
This apparently isn't the only time this exact scenario has happened. In this next clip, which was filmed by a coworker of another security guard through a CCTV feed, the guard can be seen talking and gesticulating as though having a conversation with someone in one of the building's corridors.
Who is he talking to?
When asked by a coworker over the radio who he was talking to, the guard replied that he had been chatting with a woman named Miss Abigail, who had asked him about a man named Mr. Griffin.
Dispatch to 329.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Who are you talking to?
I'm talking to a lady. I saw her walking by the store and she said she's looking for Mr. Griffin. Her name is Miss Abigail.
Did you say Miss Abigail?
Yes, ma'am. She says she wants to see Mr. Griffin, and I told her that the canvas is closed, that she should come tomorrow morning, and she might see Mr. Griffin.
Are you sure you're saying Miss Abigail? Like, she's been passed on for 2 years now.
Come again with that, please?
Miss Abigail she died 2 years ago.
You mean you can't see the person I'm talking to?
No, there's nobody in front of you at all.
As his coworker quickly pointed out, however, Miss Abigail had died 2 years prior. In the comfort of his own bedroom, a young man is practicing piano, ironically the Silent Hill theme song, when he sees this. If you didn't see it, look closer at the reflection in the TV screen. A black figure can be seen sitting on the bed in the reflection of the TV, but when he turns to look, and when he turns back to the TV, the figure that was there 3 seconds ago is no longer there. Witnessing this while practicing the theme song to Silent Hill would surely be an unnerving experience, to say the least. A man starts to hear his wife's voice calling him from downstairs. The problem is, the man is home alone while his wife is away on a trip. She hadn't been home for 2 weeks at the time this was recorded, and he should have been home alone. Along with the calls from his wife's voice, there's the repeated sound of a door being slammed shut. A security camera in the house shows another angle capturing the door making this noise, being opened and closed seemingly by itself. And while all of this is going on, the rotating horse carousel music box in the TV stand starts playing music by itself. Some people suggest this could be a skinwalker, disguising itself as the man's wife. Others suggest it's just a straight-up demon, which was summoned by using the Ouija board also tucked in the bottom of the TV stand.
Alexa, turn on all lights.
Whatever it may have been, it sure made for a creepy video. The Kinect was a discontinued accessory for the Xbox 360 and Xbox One. It contained an active sensing depth camera using structured light and a color camera. It was intended to be used as a controller-free game controller, tracking the body or bodies of one or more players in its field of view. The Kinect is able to pick up when a new person enters the room and recognizes body shapes. In this video recorded by a man's Kinect camera, you can see him going to sleep on the couch as the Kinect camera produces a stick figure that tracks his movements. However, at some random hour in the night, this is what shows up in the video. It seems as though someone materializes out of thin air and approaches the man sleeping on the couch. The figure leans over watching the man sleep, and then slowly and ominously approaches the camera before the video ends. Oddly enough, there doesn't seem to be any other actual person physically in the room besides the man sleeping on the couch. So what exactly was this Kinect picking up? A TikToker named Cass started uploading videos showcasing an Annabelle's Hugs doll she received as a gift. The doll was purchased on Amazon, and right from the start, Cass felt like something about the doll felt alive.
You guys, I didn't buy this fucking monkey. It was a gift, so you could stop asking me why the fuck I would buy the monkey. I didn't buy it. The person who bought it got it off of Amazon. It's an Ashton Drake doll, and maybe possessed as fuck was not in the description, so.
You guys, I just noticed something crazy as fuck, and you're all gonna think this is so insane, but I just took out the certificate of authenticity for her, and you're not gonna freaking believe the name on this thing. Are you shitting me?
Perhaps just an unfortunate coincidence that the doll shares the name of the popular horror movie doll, but it is definitely something to acknowledge after seeing this video that Cass recorded of her taking the doll out of the box.
Oh my fucking god, I swear to god, this thing just fucking looked at me. Oh my fucking...
The doll's eyes momentarily turn to look right at Cassidy. What makes this even more disturbing is that the doll's eyes are not supposed to be able to move.
Also, for the people who say, oh, just her eyes are supposed to move, I have those dolls, when you pick them up, their eyes move. Her eyes aren't moving. They ain't moving unless she just blinked right there. I don't fucking know.
If you have any creepy videos you want to send me, check the description for my email. But I stopped when I heard a slight dripping in the room somewhere, and the squeaking of wet shoes. My heart sank into my stomach. I said, "Bob," and I pointed my flashlight in that corner. There was Bob, with his eyes opened wide, and he lunged at me and started screaming, "I'm gonna fucking kill you." I did the night shift at a gas station, but this guy started regularly coming in really late at night. Always around 2 a.m. He'd always come in, buy a tall boy, and leave. I asked him for his name finally. He looked at me, took about 5 seconds, and said, "Bob." Well, one very stormy night, I heard the ding of the front door as someone entered. I was shocked to see it was actually him, but it was a much scarier version of Bob. I said, "Bob, are you okay?" He didn't turn his head or move. He stood still and said, "I did something really bad." And then, the next thing I remember, the lights to the place cut out, and I was standing in a pitch-dark gas station during a major storm with an unhinged drunk man. West Bengal, India has its fair share of allegedly haunted places, but perhaps none are as creepy or as intriguing as the Aliyah ghost lights. In the swampy marshes of West Bengal, there have been many sightings of these lights called Aliyah or jack-o'-lantern. They're described to be a flickering ball of light that emerges usually in the marshy regions of West Bengal and Bangladesh, and they've been attributed to being the cause of death of many fishermen. The fishermen community of the area have often spotted these unexplainable lights, and many believe that some of the fishermen were so transfixed after seeing the Aliyah light that they followed it and drowned. It's also believed by many in the area that these lights are the spirits of dead fishermen who lost their lives fishing in the marshes. These lights at times confuse the fishermen, causing them to fall in the water and drown, but also at other times, they may help guide them and prevent them from getting into danger. At least that's what locals believe. Aliyah ghost lights are not just limited to West Bengal though. They've been spotted in various places around the world, and these lights have long been associated with the paranormal or spirits. Some good spirits, some bad spirits. It's said that once you follow one of these lights, they'll flicker and diminish in size until they disappear, often causing people to panic and get lost. People have seen these lights all around the world in graveyards, swamps, and boglands, and they have been referred to as many different names. Anaya Carr from Siliguri was on the phone with her husband who was on a solo fishing trip, and when he had mentioned seeing a bright light glimmering across the marsh, he stopped replying, though the call didn't end right away. Anaya would keep saying her husband's name into the phone until it sounded like the phone was dropped, and then the call abruptly ended. Her husband was never seen again. In 2014, taxi drivers in Ibadan, Nigeria were starting to disappear, and while there was no outward evidence of any sort of foul play at first, people started to become suspicious when more and more people would disappear and mysterious-looking strangers would be lurking the area. Police were notified of the disappearances, but reportedly were uncooperative, refusing to investigate further and saying that the men had likely just run off. As the disappearances continued in the area, there was still no official response until a motorcyclist riding down a highway claimed that he had heard some crying out for help from the forest. On March 22, 2014, police finally went about investigating the forest, where they would stumble across a literal house of horrors. There, tucked away in the trees, was a seemingly abandoned building from which emanated a vile stench. Upon entering the building, they were met with countless decomposed human corpses, most of which had been bound with chains. As the search of the place continued, police began turning up other human remains in the surrounding area, many of them having been butchered and missing limbs, some of them even still bound with chains. There were also numerous human remains found scattered in the surrounding woods, stuffed within bushes, in the nooks of trees, or dumped into holes in the ground or into caves. The corpses and remains were in various states of decomposition, many of them missing limbs or internal organs. In total, over 20 decomposed human bodies and hundreds of human skulls were found in the forest, and there was a separate building full of only personal belongings of the victims, including licenses, clothing, and even children's toys. 15 people were rescued who were chained up in captivity, all severely malnourished. When police interviewed them, in most cases they could not identify the people who had taken them, but they described that they had been kidnapped, tortured, and kept in shackles with once-a-week feedings. However, a few claimed that the men who kidnapped them had been government officials, or at least were posing as them. The answers as to what exactly happened here have not been made completely clear, and it's unknown who took these people or where they went. And while some arrests were made, no one has been officially charged with any of it. On January 2, 2000, Zeb Wayne Quinn went missing in Asheville, North Carolina. Zeb was 18 years old and working at a local Walmart in the electronics section when he disappeared after finishing his shift. At around 9 p.m., he had plans to travel a moderate distance with his coworker Robert Jason Owens to buy a new car. Zeb met Robert in the Walmart parking lot before they drove separately to look at the vehicle. The two men were seen on surveillance footage at a nearby gas station at approximately 9:15 p.m. purchasing sodas at a convenience store. According to Robert, after leaving the gas station, Zeb signaled for him to pull over by flashing his headlights. Zeb told him that he had received a page and needed to return the call. After he returned from using a payphone, Robert described Zeb as frantic and nervous. Zeb told him that he needed to cancel their plans to view the car, and he eventually sped off, rear-ending Robert's truck in the process. Hours later, Robert was treated at a hospital for fractured ribs and a head injury that he claimed was due to a second car accident that same evening. No accident report was ever filed with police. The following afternoon, Zeb's mother Denise filed a missing persons report. 2 days after he was last seen, a man claiming to be Zeb placed a phone call to the Walmart where he worked. The man told Zeb's coworker that he would not be coming to work due to coming down with a fever, but the coworker recognized that the voice was not Zeb's. The phone call was placed back to a Volvo plant where Robert worked. When questioned, Robert admitted to making the phone call, claiming that he was doing Zeb a favor after he called and asked Robert to call in sick for him. During police investigations, a woman named Misty Taylor was interviewed, as she and Zeb had become romantically involved in the weeks prior to his disappearance, and he had told friends and family that he had been threatened by her abusive boyfriend Wesley Smith after he discovered that the two of them had been speaking. On January 6, 2000, Zeb's mom received a phone call from a former classmate of her son, who happened to be a coworker at the Asheville hospital where both were nurses, who told her that she had seen his car in the parking lot of a barbecue restaurant next to the hospital. Police examined the car, which had been left with its headlights on, but there was also a pair of lips and an exclamation mark drawn on the car's back windshield in lipstick, and a live puppy was found inside. A plastic hotel keycard was also discovered in the vehicle, but police couldn't find the source hotel. There was also a jacket that didn't belong to Zeb in the car. Police collected forensic evidence from the car, but uncovered no new leads. Zeb's mother believes that the car was placed there by somebody that knew that his family worked and lived nearby, intending that one of them would find it. A couple later called police to report that they had seen Zeb's car being driven in downtown Asheville before it was parked at the restaurant, and assisted police in producing a composite image of the person driving the car. Police later noted that the sketch looked identical to Misty Taylor. Robert Jason Owens was arrested in 2017 for the murder of Zeb. However, in his plea agreement in July of 2022, just last month, Robert's story went that his uncle Gene, who died in 2017, knew Misty Taylor's aggressive boyfriend and was asked to do something to keep Zeb away from her, and Robert said his uncle's remedy was murder. though he said that he played no part and only witnessed it. The judge accepted Robert's plea and sentenced him to 150 to 189 months in prison, which will be served concurrent to a 60 to 75-year sentence he's currently serving for the murder of a couple in 2015, which is an entirely different story of its own. Regarding Zeb's murder, no one can really know for sure what actually happened. On July 13, 2011, Rebecca Zahau was found hanging at the Spreckles Mansion in Coronado, California, and she was pronounced dead by first responders called to the residence. Rebecca's body was found nude, bound, and gagged. Her death occurred 2 days after 6-year-old Max Shackney, the son of her boyfriend Jonah Shackney, had fallen from the staircase of the mansion and was held in a hospital in critical condition. Rebecca and her younger sister Zena were the only people present at the time of Max's fall. On July 16, 2011, Max succumbed to his injuries and died in the hospital. Rebecca's death was ruled a suicide, but her sisters don't buy it and have long pressed their point, waging battles both with authorities and possible suspects. On July 12, 2011, Rebecca dropped off Zena at the airport for her flight back to Missouri, and then picked up Jonah's brother Adam, who had just arrived on a flight from Memphis, Tennessee. Rebecca, Jonah, and Adam ate dinner with a friend named Howard that evening. Afterwards, Rebecca and Adam returned to the Spreckles mansion, while Jonah held a vigil for Max with the child's mother, Dina Romano. There were reports of loud music coming from the Spreckles mansion later that night. On the morning of July 13th at around 6:45 a.m., Adam stated that he found Rebecca's nude body hanging from a balcony, with her wrists and ankles bound and her hands behind her back. He called 911 at 6:48 a.m., then sent a text message to his brother to inform him of the news. He cut down her body before the police arrived. Medics attempted to revive her, but it was already far too late. Police performed an autopsy to determine the cause of death, and from the start, speculations of foul play had arisen, but investigators were unable to find any other DNA at the scene besides Rebecca's. The San Diego Sheriff's Department formally announced their finding that Rebecca had committed suicide, but her family wasn't happy about that, and they were firm on their belief that she did not commit suicide. Family and friends looked at Adam Shackney, Jonah's brother, as a prime suspect, as he was alone in the house with Rebecca during her hanging, and it could have been a revenge killing for the accidental death of his nephew while he was under Rebecca's watch. For 7 years, Rebecca's sisters had to fight to make it known she didn't commit suicide, and eventually it paid off. In 2018, a jury in San Diego found Adam Shackney responsible for the hanging death of Rebecca after a month-long civil trial. Rebecca's family was awarded more than $5 million for loss of companionship. The 12-member jury found Shackney responsible for her death in a 9-3 vote. The majority agreed Adam touched Rebecca with intent to harm her before her death, and the touching caused her death. The court never awarded any punitive damages. Because this was a civil trial, Adam didn't face any criminal charges and cannot be sentenced to prison. Regardless of the civil suit, the findings by police allegedly pointed at Jonah and Adam being innocent and Rebecca's death being a suicide. But the biggest flaw in that would be the way in which Rebecca's body was found hanging, bound and gagged. It's not something somebody would do to themselves. Still, what really happened may never be known for sure. It took me at least a second before I could realize he was choking me from the back seat. As a former Uber driver, I rolled down my window and called out Tom, and he called back yes, and walked slowly around the back, getting into the seat right behind me. When people sat right behind me, it just made me a little paranoid sometimes. The address he gave me was 10 miles away. By the 6-mile mark, things started getting uneasy in there. I was afraid to look into the rearview mirror. By the 8-mile mark, I started to realize we were in the middle of nowhere. There was less than a mile left in the drive now, still surrounded by nothing but woods with the occasional empty-looking building. I was approaching the dead-end street. As the street came up, I slowed down so I could get a good look of it. But nothing could be seen, just pitch blackness. I could only imagine why he wanted to get me out here alone. Instantly, he hopped out of his seat and yelled at me to turn around, so I apologized and did a quick 3-point turn. Thanks for the ride. I wasn't even thinking about money at this point. All of a sudden, I felt pressure on my neck. This has been heavily requested for a while now. a compilation of some of the stories I've read through the years that genuinely freaked me out the first time I read them. I was out doing a delivery one late night. It was probably the longest drive I've ever taken for a pizza delivery from the pizza place I used to work at. It was a 20-minute drive, which isn't too crazy out where I live. Plus, they ordered 4 large pies, so I figured it was a party and I'd get a much bigger tip. Navigating the dirt roads at night was always annoying, though. I pulled up to the given address. It was some old, sketchy-looking building literally in the middle of a forest clearing. There were no cars parked anywhere, or any lights on. I put my car in park, and I called my boss. I asked him to reread the address at least 3 times to make sure I typed in the right place. I could tell he was in a really bad mood, and he told me to at least knock on the door and check it out. He would normally get mad if we took back 1 pie, but I was afraid of what he would do if I brought back 4. I was insanely unnerved, but I got out anyway and forced myself to the front door of the building. There was no doorbell, so I just knocked really hard. I heard nothing, and didn't really expect to hear anything. I was extremely disappointed, not because nobody answered the door, but because I was realizing that it was all a waste of time and gas. I knocked 1 more time out of desperation, then began to hear some kind of rustling noises from inside the building. I knocked again, and yelled that I was the pizza guy. There was silence now. I felt a bit more uncomfortable now than before, but before I could turn around, I noticed something at the window. There was someone looking through the window. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. All I noticed were their eyes. Their eyes were open wider than I knew possible, staring intently at me. I was disturbed enough by this to drop the pizzas and run back to my car. The shitty thing wouldn't start until turning the key for the 3rd time. I drove off the grass and back onto the dirt road, but I felt the car rocking about, shaking and bumping. Something wasn't right. I didn't make it far from the building before I started hearing a sharp scraping sound coming from outside. There was so much resistance that I couldn't even drive. The car came to a stop. I got out of the car to check what the hell was wrong. A chill ran up my spine as I began to feel like my heart was constantly skipping beats. My tires had been slashed and had completely fallen off the rim. Not just the front though. All 4 tires were slashed. I realized somebody did this when I was knocking on the door to that building. Instead of running, I got back in the car and locked the doors. I was so close to that building I could practically see it from where I was if it weren't for the trees blocking the view. I called 911 and told everything to the operator. She told me the cops would be over as soon as possible and that I need to stay hidden. I asked her if it's advisable to stay in the car or run, and she told me it would be best to stay in the car with the door locked. She asked me to stay on the line with her until the cops would arrive. My whole body was shaking. In all directions there was nothing but dark, seemingly endless forest. I knew it would take forever for the cops to get there. I was not comfortable with sitting in that car so close to whoever did this. The next part is what utterly destroyed me. It still shakes me to this day, and I hope nobody ever has to experience this kind of fear. As I was scanning all the windows, making sure nobody was outside, I looked in the rearview mirror, and there was the same person I saw at that window, eyes opened wider than ever. I could see now that it was a woman, and I could ever so slightly see a smile begin to spread across her face. I opened my door and full-on sprinted into the woods, not caring how much noise I made. I ran until I was out of breath, which didn't take long, and I hid behind a giant log on the ground. I tried to cover my loud breathing with my hand as I waited and waited for what felt like hours until I finally heard sirens in the distance. I gathered up all the stamina I had left to run all the way back in the direction of the dirt road. Eventually the glowing red and blue lights came into view, and I had never felt better in my life. They were parked in front of my car, investigating with flashlights. I came out yelling at them like a lunatic to help me. I fell to the floor and started to gag, almost throwing up from running so much. They picked me up and began to ask me questions, to which I explained everything to the best of my ability. One of the 2 cars drove over to the building, and the 2 officers began to search the building. They came back with nothing except for a couple of spiky objects. These objects were exactly the same as the ones used to slash my tires. The cops guessed that it was some kind of sick, demented couple, being that I saw the woman, but unfortunately, as far as I know, they were never found, and that still kills me inside to this day. I obviously quit my job right after that and started working at a local grocery store. I know that I'll never forget seeing that woman at the back of my car. It's a little-known common courtesy out in the mountains during a snowstorm that if someone's seeking shelter in your cabin, you let them in. No, I wasn't the one offering that courtesy to someone else in the story. I was the one seeking refuge. It was supposed to be a long weekend of hunting, but what started as a cold, sunny day quickly formed tons of dark storm clouds, and I quickly found myself right in the middle of a blizzard. After a full, rather unsuccessful day of hunting hares, I was way too far and disoriented to make my way back to my cabin. I had to seek refuge somewhere else. I came across a log cabin nestled between a circle of trees. No lights on, but I still had to try the door. I hit the door with my fist a few times. No answer, but I could hear footsteps on the other side, approaching the door. I expected it to open, but it didn't. I shouted that I'm lost and need shelter. The door cracked open, and I heard a voice say, "Come in, leave your boots by the door." I waited a bit, expecting him to open the door fully and formally greet me as anyone would, but that didn't happen, so I pushed the door open myself and entered the dark cabin. The room was lit by 2 candles, just enough for me to see the couch that the man then told me to sleep on. As for the man, all I saw was his silhouette on the far side of the room. The little light from the candles didn't extend that far. I dropped my bag and gun on the floor and laid down on the couch. I thanked the man for letting me crash here till the storm blows over. He didn't answer. His behavior wasn't the most bizarre thing. Folks are strange up in the mountains. If he wasn't up for conversation, I'd just get some early shut-eye. I closed my eyes, though the level of darkness with my eyes closed wasn't much of a difference. I was subconsciously waiting to hear the man's footsteps leave the room, but they never did. I opened my eyes, and his silhouette was still in the corner of the room, just standing there. I felt the need to say, "Yeah, I think I'm just gonna get some sleep now, thanks." No response. I turned to my other side so that I wouldn't be tempted to just keep opening my eyes to check on him. Some time passed, but without having heard his footsteps walk away, the curiosity was eating away at me. I turned over to look again, and this time, I swear to God, the silhouette of the man was closer by at least a few feet. I couldn't make out his face, but the slight glow from the candles would just barely trickle around the man's forehead, and what I saw was disgustingly pale skin. I quickly gathered my belongings and thanked him, but I said I had to go. I didn't look at him anymore, because I don't think I wanted to know what he looked like. I put my boots on outside and hurried back into the blizzard. I came across another cabin down the hill, this one with the lights on. I knocked on the door, and some old man and his wife answered the door. They welcomed me in immediately and were very inviting. They gave me some hot tea and offered me a spot on the couch. I told them my story about the freaky cabin up the hill, and the two looked at each other, puzzled. The woman confirmed 2 times the cabin I was talking about. Then she said, "Honey, the owner of that cabin was murdered 2 years ago. That cabin has been vacant ever since." I'm 27 years old. I live alone in a rural town in Virginia, about 2 blocks away from my parents. My parents are both in their 60s, and my mom has become a very worrisome woman in her old age. Sometimes she walks over uninvited and lets herself in, since I had regrettably given her a key, which can get a bit annoying. Like if I would be out really late on weekends at a bar or with women, I would sometimes come home to my mom sitting in the living room waiting, worried sick. I know you may just think, "Oh my god, that's crazy, why not just put your foot down and tell her to stop?" Well, because you don't know my mom. It's very hard to describe her, but she's the kind of worrisome, innocent little lady that you just can't bring yourself to go against. And I hate to mention, she also has mild dementia. Anyway, this was Saturday night. I think it was around 2 in the morning. I was at a nearby club with a group of college friends, really the only place to hang out in this boring town, and I was getting ready to head home. I said goodbye to all my friends and walked the 3 blocks it took to get back to my house. I walked up my front stoop in my drunken haze and dug my hand in my pocket for my keys. When I grabbed the doorknob, I realized it was unlocked. My mom was here again. I quietly opened and shut the front door, locking it behind me. I put my keys on the kitchen counter and found a note written in my mom's handwriting saying, "You forgot this at our house, next to the box of half-eaten cake my parents didn't want." I didn't see my mom anywhere, so I assumed she must have gone upstairs to sleep in the guest bed until I got back, which is something she would commonly do as well. Then I heard footsteps upstairs, confirming it, and that's when I sighed once again. 27 years old, almost 3 in the morning, and she still has to wait up and treat me like a child. I ran upstairs to check the guest bed, empty, along with all the bathrooms. I was afraid Mom was having one of her episodes due to her condition, so I ran to the phone to call my dad. After 4 rings, my dad picked up in a groggy voice, asking what the hell is the matter. After I told him that I heard Mom wandering around upstairs in my house, there was a short pause, and then he said, "That's not possible, she's sleeping right next to me." My mouth fell open as I turned my head to face the dark upstairs, and just barely by the light provided by the kitchen, I could see a head peering around from the corner at the top of the stairs, looking down at me. I screamed into the phone as I ran out the front door and down the street to my parents' house, explaining to my father on the way. About halfway there, my dad told me, "Alright, I'm gonna call the cops," and hung up. I made it to my parents' house, where my mom was already waiting at the door, worried sick. My mom explained that she did come over to clean my kitchen a little bit and to bring over the cake they didn't want. 2 police cars pulled up in front of my parents' house, where they escorted me and my dad down the street to my house. 1 officer stayed outside with us, while 2 others went inside to investigate. It felt like 15 minutes before they came back outside and said it was clear. They checked the crawl space, the attic, everything. There was really nothing for me to report, other than the door was left unlocked and I saw the outline of a head upstairs before I ran for it. Still, I didn't feel safe sleeping in there that night, so I went back to my parents' house. Me and my dad are certain that my mom simply forgot to lock the door when she left, as her memory has been getting worse over the past few months. My dad has been stopping her from coming over alone from now on, which makes me both sad but also relieved. Some nights, I still get paranoid that whoever was in my house that night never left, and is still hiding in here somewhere. This is one of the few unexplainable events I've experienced in my life. I was home upstairs in my room, writing my paper for my history class. As far as I knew, I was home alone. But apparently I was mistaken, because my mom's voice called out from downstairs, yelling my name. I called back, "What?" She didn't answer, so, slightly annoyed because I didn't want to be interrupted from my train of thought on my paper, I reluctantly got up to go downstairs and see what she wanted. When I got downstairs, I looked around for my mom, but she wasn't anywhere in sight, so I yelled out, "Mom?" and she yelled back my name in response. Her voice came from down in the basement, so I went to the basement door. But strangely the lights were off. I called down the stairs, "Mom?" again, and she called back. I yelled out, "What are you doing down there with the lights off?" She didn't respond. I flicked on the light and went down the stairs. I heard my mom call my name again as I was near to the bottom of the steps. It was getting weird. Each time she called my name, it sounded exactly the same, like there was 0 difference in inflection every single time she said my name. I yelled out, "Mom," again, and she once again yelled back my name. She was nowhere to be seen in the basement, but then I noticed the little crawl space closet door was open. I call it that because it's a weird closet that you have to kind of crawl into, but it takes up a large chunk of the basement. That was the only place left in the basement that my mom could be. So I said, "Mom," one final time. No answer this time. I went closer to the closet door and got on my knees just to try and look in. It was pitch black inside, and I was starting to get freaked out. I said, "Mom, are you messing with me?" There was no response at all, just the quiet buzzing sound from the basement light. I got back up, and for some reason decided to sprint back upstairs, slamming and locking the basement door behind me. I didn't know what I had just witnessed and heard, but I went to grab the house phone and call my mom's cell number. It rang a few times until my mom picked up, and I learned that she was out grocery shopping. I told her, but she didn't believe my story, of course. She thought I was messing with her. It took half an hour of begging her to believe me that she finally went along with it, and when she and my dad were both home, we all went down to the basement together. The closet door was still open. My dad went inside, but there was no one in there. This still remains to be the most haunting, unexplainable experience of my life. There was this one time I was out late drinking with friends. It was some point in the summer of 2016. We were kind of just walking around town and then around the neighborhood when one of my friends spotted someone hiding in a bush. He pointed and said, "Look," and we all walked a little closer to get a better look. We could see what he was talking about, but just barely. It was bizarre, like someone hiding in this bush in front of this house. When we got too close, apparently, this weird, off-putting sound started coming from the bush. So we all screamed and laughed and ran away. We screamed because it was scary, but laughed because at the same time it was bizarrely funny. And there were a lot of us, so... Anyway, we walked back to our houses respectively, assuming whoever was in that bush was just messing with people. I fell asleep pretty easily that night since I was drunk, but next thing I remember was waking up to the near pitch blackness of my room. I couldn't look at the clock to see what time it was because I literally couldn't move. I was in a sleep paralysis state. I looked around the room with my eyes only and started to hear a familiar noise, the noise we heard coming from that bush. Then I looked straight in front of me, at the foot of my bed, and what I saw was pure nightmare fuel. It was what appeared to be this floating, grotesque, horrific head of a demonic ghost-like thing. As it got closer to me, I realized it wasn't floating. There was a body, but its body blended in with the blackness of the room. Its mouth hung open, and it just kept making the familiar noise from the bush. It got mere inches from my face before it suddenly just faded away, and I was able to let out a scream and move my body. I sat in my bed, panting and heart racing. I flicked on the lamp and checked around my bed, but that demonic thing was gone. What I just experienced seemed so real, like I was awake for it. It wasn't a dream. I told my parents about it the next day, and they agreed with me that it was sleep paralysis, though they had never heard of anyone seeing freaky shit like that before. There were writings of somebody's plans to brutally slaughter the bullies from school, and he recognized the handwriting to be that of his daughter. There was a note that said, "I will rip blank into shreds and drown her in her own blood." He ran to his daughter's room and found Jacob in the closet. There was where Jacob found a secret doorway, which once opened, led to a stairway that led to a basement area that Milad had no idea of. A small table covered in weird dark red stains with a big book, a total of 28 pens which had no ink left, and a mountain of trash with an old laptop on the table, and he was heavily disgusted by its contents. There are countless Christmas horror movies focused on killer Santas, but maybe not so surprisingly, there have been some real-life killer Santas out there, and in this video I'm going to tell you about the disturbing stories of a couple of them. Just a heads up, this video may not be holly jolly, and there are some darker themes. Joseph and Alice Ortega loved Christmas. It was their favorite time of year to spend with their family. Their two oldest sons, James and Charles, and their daughters Letitia, Alicia, and Sylvia. On Christmas Eve of 2008, the Ortega family invited all 5 of their adult children and their families to their home in Covina, California, the middle to upper middle class, low crime community about 20 miles east of Los Angeles. The family was in the middle of a Christmas Eve poker game when the doorbell rang, and what unfolded next was unimaginable. Shortly after the doorbell sounded, police received 911 calls from the Ortega's neighbor. The caller cried into the phone that someone was burning down the Ortega's house. That someone was Bruce Jeffrey Pardo, dressed in a Santa Claus suit. The fire department was dispatched to the Ortega house, but the calls kept coming in. Some even reported that they heard shooting coming from the house, and when the police arrived at the scene, it was a total nightmare. The only surviving Ortega family members police could locate was Letitia, her husband, and their 8-year-old daughter, who managed to escape the house and make it to a neighbor's house.
Immediately. Who's in your house? Immediately. Ma'am, is the guy in your house right now? We're having 2 houses down on the Google section. Okay. Ma'am, hold on. Is he at your house? No, he's constantly shooting. What do you think his name is? Bruce? His name is Bruce Pardo. Okay, and who is he to you guys? Who is he to you? He with my ex-brother-in-law. They're going through a divorce right now. Okay. With my sister. Hold on 1 second, okay? I don't know who else is alive. I know, ma'am. Just stay on the phone with me, okay?
My whole family, there's 30 people, 25 people.
I know. It's okay. The officers are there. They're trying to get to you guys, okay?
Letitia's daughter, however, had been shot, so the family had already made their way to the hospital. What happened was Sylvia Ortega Pardo, Bruce Pardo's soon-to-be ex-wife, had finalized their divorce the week prior to the attack. This apparently caused Bruce to snap in the worst way imaginable, and this was his way of getting revenge. Bruce had arrived at the Ortega home in a Santa costume with a gift-wrapped package containing a rolling air compressor converted to deliver gasoline from it and at least 4 9mm semi-automatic handguns. His 8-year-old niece Katrina, the daughter of Letitia, ran to answer the door in excitement to be greeted with the Santa, only to be shot in the face. Luckily, she survived. Bruce then started firing indiscriminately at fleeing partygoers. After he ran out of bullets, Bruce pulled out his homemade flamethrower to spray 18 gallons of gasoline into the house, causing it to burn down. In the middle of investigating the aftermath of this chaotic scene, police received a tip from a neighbor. She and her husband had seen a car leaving the cul-de-sac at around 11:45 p.m. Police started searching the Ortega's scorched home. They found bodies burned beyond recognition, which were later identified as missing Ortega family members. A total of 9 people were murdered. While police were busy investigating this massacre, they received a call from Bruce's brother, Brad Pardo, who returned home from a Christmas party to find his brother laying dead in a pool of blood. Bruce had taken his own life. On Christmas Day, police interviewed Letitia, who said that despite the Santa Claus costume, beard, and hat, she could identify the shooter to be her sister's ex-husband, Bruce Pardo. Investigators then went back to Brad's house, where Bruce was found dead, and searched his car, which ended up being the same car the Ortega's neighbors had described seeing on their street after the murders. Inside the vehicle, police found a Santa suit and thousands of rounds of ammunition. The car had also been booby-trapped to explode once the Santa suit was removed, and though the vehicle exploded, no one was injured. The autopsy of Bruce revealed third-degree burns on his hands and arms, and part of the Santa suit had melted onto his body. Police also found $17,000 in cash cling-wrapped on his legs inside a girdle. Police believed he didn't initially plan to kill himself. Around the same time, a man reported a suspicious car parked in front of his Pasadena home. Police ran the plates and found the car had been rented by Bruce. Though the car wasn't rigged, it was packed with supplies including a computer, clothes, water, food, and maps of the US and Mexico. Police believe Bruce had been planning on escaping to Mexico after his killing spree, and this was his getaway vehicle. The vehicle was also parked about 500 feet from the house of Scott Nord, Sylvia's divorce attorney. This was definitely not a coincidence, and Bruce was likely planning on also murdering Scott, because in June of that year, Bruce was ordered to pay $1,800 a month in spousal support. The divorce clearly took over Bruce's life, and he began to plot ways to get back at Sylvia, and instead of just killing her, he decided that he was going to destroy everything and everyone that she loved. The most likely explanation for Bruce's suicide would be his unexpected injuries. He didn't realize there was an open flame somewhere in the house, likely a candle, and when he was spraying gasoline, this led to an explosion that left him horrifically burned. Instead of driving to kill Sylvia's attorney and then escaping to Mexico like he most likely originally planned, Bruce instead went to his brother's, where he killed himself because of how badly he was burned. Katrina Yusufpolsky is alive and well today, and fortunately she hasn't let the horrific experience overtake her, and she's currently living her life to the fullest. But unfortunately, Bruce Pardo was not the only story of a killer Santa named Bruce. Bruce MacArthur was known as an outwardly jovial man who was the perfect Santa due to his ample white hair and beard, and so that's what he did as his second job. He was a Santa at Toronto's Agincourt Mall until as recently as 2016. Bruce was at the time 68 years old, and when he wasn't working as a mall Santa, he was working as a successful landscaper, trusted by his many clients to turn their yards into lush gardens. The sick thing is, Bruce's jolly personality he conveyed was just a front. The parents happily watching their kids on his knee, and his clients admiring their new lawns had no idea what Bruce actually was, a necrophile and a serial killer. Little did one of his clients know, he was turning their lush new garden into a graveyard. Between September 2010 and June 2017, Bruce murdered at least 8 men. His targets were usually vulnerable, having been poor, lonely, or new immigrants. All of Bruce's victims had arrived to what they thought was a safe country to explore their sexuality. Bruce's seemingly welcoming and friendly nature led his victims to thinking he was a friend and to trusting him. Then he would kill them. Bruce was described by colleagues and coworkers to be a great guy who always had a smile on his face. For 30 years, he was seemingly happily married to his wife Janice, who he had 2 children with and lived in a house in Oshawa with, a middle-class town very close to downtown Toronto. In the late 90s, however, Bruce came out of the closet, probably to the shock of his wife, and not long after suggesting that the two have an open relationship, he left his family and moved to Toronto. But he remained on speaking terms with his family. Bruce became a regular in gay neighborhoods and wanted to be part of the LGBT community. But pretty soon that community didn't want him to be a part of it, as he quickly earned himself a reputation of being trouble. In 2003, when in his late 50s, Bruce received his first criminal conviction for the assault of a man with an iron pipe in the man's home 2 years prior. Bruce turned himself into the police, and throughout the case, he maintained that he blacked out before the assault and didn't know why he did it. In January of 2003, Bruce pleaded guilty to 1 count of assault causing bodily harm and assault with a weapon. But thanks to his lawyers, Bruce didn't serve prison time. Rather, he was ordered to attend counseling for anger management and provide a DNA sample to police. A few months later, Bruce had his record suspended, so nobody would ever know that he'd been arrested at all. Bruce's landscaping business was busy enough to occasionally hire casuals, until one of those hires disappeared, Mahid Kayhan. Bruce admitted to police to knowing Mahid. He told police that Mahid had worked for him doing landscaping for a month, and the 2 men had a sexual relationship that Bruce claimed he broke off. Bruce was not a suspect at the time of the interview. He was treated as a witness in the missing persons cases. Bruce's approach to murder was usually the same, strangulation using a rope and metal bar. When his victims were dead, he'd pose their bodies and photograph them, sometimes in his apartment and sometimes in his red Dodge Caravan. One victim was posed wearing a fur coat and with a cigar in his mouth. Some had their beards and heads shaved, others had their eyes closed. Then he would take close-up photos of their genitalia. Bruce stored these dead body photo shoots in digital files on his computer. He then dismembered his victims, distributing their body parts in one client's garden, putting to use his knowledge and skill in gardening. In June of 2016, Bruce ended up in a police station after a guy he was having sexual relations with reported him for almost choking him to death while they were in the back of his van. The man managed to escape and report Bruce to the police. And for the second time, Bruce turned himself into the police.
We're inside the guy's van. There's Bruce. Now for a while we try to make out once in a while. All of a sudden he grabbed me by the throat, threw me on behind my back. Grabbed me by the throat and tried to strangle me.
The man who reported Bruce claimed they were hooking up in the back of his van when Bruce started choking him violently. The man claims he barely managed to escape. But when Bruce was being questioned by police, he played it off that he was asked by the man to choke him, that he liked it rough.
And right now, you're under arrest. You were placed under arrest this evening for the offense of assault, okay? You've been brought here 232 Division for the purposes of being investigated for that offense, okay? So, an allegation has been made against you, and this officer in just a moment is going to let you know exactly what that allegation is, okay?
So the allegations are that around 6:30 p.m. this evening, you met up with a gentleman by the name of at the intersection of Bathurst and Finch. During the course of your involvement with him, there was an allegation made of an assault, which in choking was the allegation made, and that's basically why you're under arrest today, for that assault.
Okay. Okay. So, sir, if you would like to provide us with your account of what occurred earlier this evening.
Well, we talked about going for dinner, and he said he needed to take a shower, so I said I'd meet him at the Tim Hortons at Finch and Bathurst. And so he arrived, and we were going to have sex, and he suggested do it in the back of his truck, since it hadn't been used yet. It was a brand new truck. I said, well, there's more room in the back of my van. So we went to my van. So then I thought, okay, he likes it rough. So I put my hand to his throat, and just for a few seconds, because before that he's very strong, he just completely turned around and grabbed me by the throat. He said, now I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to you. And he had me by the throat to the point that I couldn't breathe. So I put my hands up in the air like surrender, because I couldn't talk. And that's when he finally let go. And then he jumped out of the car. He said, I don't want to see you again.
Has anything like this ever happened before, where things got out of hand?
Not like that. No, not that quickly, or not just like that.
Okay. Things have never gotten violent? No. Okay.
I thought he liked it rough.
The police believed Bruce's story and the case was dropped. On June 26, 2017, Andrew Kinsman disappeared, and this was the start of Bruce's downfall. Andrew was different from Bruce's other victims. Andrew was well known and liked among Toronto's church and gay community, and he was the caretaker of his apartment building in Cabbagetown. His disappearance following Toronto's Gay Pride Parade was quickly noticed, and within days, posters of his face were seen all over town. Andrew had become the latest addition to the disturbing disappearances of gay men that had been plaguing the community for years. Andrew's friends and colleagues knew he was interested in true crime and serial killers. A colleague noted that he had an occasional hookup with a man very into the psychology of serial killers and how they functioned. When police searched Andrew's apartment, they found computer files on the serial killer and necrophile Dennis Nilsen, otherwise known as the Kindly Killer. Dennis Nilsen's methods of murder were eerily similar to those of Bruce. They also found a documentary on U.S. serial killer John Wayne Gacy and 10 pictures of Bruce taken on September 11, 2010, using Andrew's camera. The name Bruce was also scribbled on Andrew's calendar, eerily coincidentally for the day he disappeared. It's possible Andrew suspected Bruce was a killer and was doing his own investigation. Police discovered CCTV footage showing Andrew getting into Bruce's red 2004 Dodge Caravan. They finally had a suspect. In September of 2017, while Bruce was under surveillance, police took a coffee cup he discarded in the trash to obtain a sample of his DNA. 2 months later, Bruce dumped his caravan at a scrapyard, which was seized by the police and forensically examined. They found blood and semen connecting multiple victims to Bruce, including Andrew Kinsman and another victim, Salim Essen. This evidence allowed police to obtain a warrant to enter Bruce's home covertly without him being there. Forensic experts discovered photographs of Andrew and Salim on his computer, taken after both men were dead. The timing of this discovery was impeccable, because Bruce was likely about to commit another murder. The next day, police witnessed a younger man arrive at Bruce's apartment building in Toronto. The man was likely to be Bruce's next victim. They raided Bruce's apartment, finding the man who entered his apartment naked and handcuffed to the bed with a black bag over his head. None of this was done with his consent, and he was screaming for help. Bruce was arrested and charged with the murders of Andrew and Salim. A deeper search of his apartment revealed files on each of his 8 victims, and souvenirs from each of his crimes. They included ropes and a metal bar used in the strangulations, jewelry from multiple victims, and a notebook from Salim. They also found a file he'd already prepared for the man they'd saved, confirming that he was close to having the same fate as the other 8 known victims. Police checked 75 properties that Bruce had worked on, and at one client's property in Leaside, they found body parts from the 8 victims in large planter boxes and an adjacent ravine. Karen Fraser, the homeowner, was shocked and stated that Bruce was the best friend, neighbor, relative anyone could want, a similar description many others used for him in the past. But one major question still stands: were there only 8 victims? Bruce entered a guilty plea early in court proceedings, but showed no sign of remorse. He was given a life sentence on each murder charge. Between 1975 and 1978, 14 men from Toronto's gay community were murdered. The method of killings varied, including beating, strangulation, and stabbing. Police solved around half of the cases, but the rest remained cold cases. It seemed likely that Bruce was somehow linked to these other murders. For a seemingly jolly mall Santa to be capable of such atrocities, makes you realize you never really know what kind of person somebody actually can be behind closed doors. This video is going to be a little different from my others, in that I'm going to focus on one story instead of 3. Now to begin, everyone knows what a crawlspace is, whether you have one or you don't. An unoccupied narrow space within a home between the ground and the first floor, usually in place of a basement and used for storage. Usually the scariest things you'd find in a crawlspace would be rodents or giant spider crickets jumping at you. But Jake Binger found something much more disturbing than any creepy creatures in his crawlspace. In a nice area of Firestone, Colorado, Jake owns his own house where his girlfriend lives with him. Jake had met his girlfriend, who remains nameless, at a comedy club in town, and the two hit it off and would eventually start to date. At some point during this time, she opened up to him about her old abusive ex. She described her ex as a ticking time bomb, how he could at times be very sweet, and that she loved his more gentle side, but that he could switch to a completely different person just like a flick of a switch. And in this alternate personality of his, he was a very aggressive, scary man who would do things like fight bouncers at bars or punch holes in walls when angry, or even sometimes getting physical with her, and he got angry rather easily. Things would become so rocky between the two that eventually she would end things with her ex, but he didn't take that news well. She feared that her ex was stalking her parents' house at late hours of the night because either she or her parents would hear sounds from the backyard, like the gate slamming shut or the backyard shed door closing. Her ex disabled all forms of social media after the breakup, and she became so concerned for her well-being that she decided to move in with her current boyfriend Jake. Now you may be wondering, what does this have to do with anything? Well, on one regular night that Jake's girlfriend wasn't in the house with him, he was in his living room when he heard noises from in the crawlspace. He moved from his living room to his kitchen and sat at the island for a while, continuing to listen and hearing strange occasional thumping sounds from directly below him. It was at this time that he started to record a video for his Snapchat story, assuming what he was hearing was an animal of some kind, such as a raccoon. As he enters his crawlspace, he stops recording for a second so that he could take another video with the flash on so that he could navigate the crawlspace. The crawlspace appears to be mostly empty, aside from some boxes that were tucked into one corner. Jake says when he saw these boxes this way, he was confused because he didn't remember leaving them that way. Jake walks deeper into the crawl space where the left side expands further down. Jake says he heard a noise in one corner, like pebbles being scraped on the concrete floor. As he heard the noise, he turned to the corner where he saw the terrifying sight of a hunched over man dressed in all black, who was hiding in the corner behind a wall, now getting up and approaching Jake. Jake's scream sounded like a legitimate scream from somebody witnessing something as disturbing as an intruder hiding in their crawl space and then basically lunging at them. The video cuts out seconds later, as being that it was a Snapchat video. Once he let go of the record button, the video stopped. At this point, Jake explained that he ran back to the ladder of the crawl space, and as he climbed up, the man grabbed his foot and tried to pull him down. But Jake managed to kick his way out of the grip and slam the crawl space door in his face. Unfortunately, the door to the closet, which contained the crawl space door, didn't have a lock. So Jake's first instinct was to run to the kitchen and grab the biggest knife, then lock himself inside the bathroom. He heard the closet door open and then footsteps come over to the bathroom door, and then the man on the other side of the door try the doorknob. Not knowing what kind of weapons the person might have had, Jake didn't engage the intruder in a fight. Instead, he silently called 911 and kept the line going, and eventually, he heard footsteps quickly leave the house out the front door. Now Jake told the 911 operator about the break-in, and so police came to the house, conducted a quick investigation, and a police report was created for the incident. Jake's girlfriend refused to come to the house after hearing of the incident, because she swore left and right that the man had to be her ex. It's impossible to make out any notable facial features on the man in the video. Jake says he saw that the man was wearing a black mask and his head was covered by a hood, which you can kind of see in the video. Jake also described the man to have a very tall-looking, intimidating stature, despite his hunched-over posture in the crawl space. Jake's girlfriend's ex was a very tall man, and upon watching the video, she swears it looks just like his body. Of course, this is just speculation on her part, and without solid evidence, legally they don't have much of a leg to stand on as far as pressing charges. In the video though, loud thumping and hammering type sounds could be heard in the beginning. And after investigating, Jake found that the intruder had ripped through some of the insulation of the crawl space and had been hammering at some of the wood in the ceiling of the crawl space, and also some of the pipes. It's unknown why he was doing this. It was also discovered that the key that the couple hides in one of their sheds outside was missing, which already revealed how the intruder got inside, and might insinuate that the man who broke in had his eyes on the house for a while. Jake changed the locks on the door that same day, but his girlfriend has yet to return to that house, worried that it's now being stalked by her crazy ex-boyfriend. Jake has installed a Ring doorbell camera recently, and on several occasions, he's gotten a notification from his Alexa device that there's someone at his front door, but there's never anybody actually there. Not visibly, at least. While there isn't any solid evidence as to who the intruder was, it may be a strong possibility that it is in fact her ex-boyfriend. What started as a guy simply trying to get a funny Snapchat story of what he assumed to be a raccoon in his crawl space turned into something much more horrifying. The start of a nightmare, even. Jake said he would keep me updated on the matter, so if any new information comes up, I'd consider making a follow-up if you guys would be interested. July 15th, 1976, Chowchilla, California. A day that the town would like to forget forever, yet remains a part of its history. At around 4 p.m., school bus driver Ed Ray was driving 26 students of Dairyland Elementary School home from a summer class trip to the Chowchilla Fairground swimming pool. Ray was described as a humble rancher with a humble day job. Stocky, about 55 years old, a guy you would not want to pick a fight with, a guy who works with his hands and doesn't talk much. On this particular day, Ed's bus was rowdy, but the kids all loved him for his patience and reliability. The kids were all loud and excited after just having spent the afternoon swimming. Some of them were even singing, but when the bus turns onto Avenue 21, Ray sees a white Dodge van blocking the road with its door open. He tries to weave around the empty van, when a guy in overalls with a pantyhose covering his face jumps out in front of the bus with a revolver. The man walks to the driver's side window and asks Ed, with no intimidation in his voice, "Would you open the door, please?" Ed opens it. Two more identically dressed figures jump in, one with a rifle which is quickly pointed at Ed. Everybody goes to the back of the bus. The one without a rifle starts to drive, and the one with the revolver hops in the van to follow them. They drive about a mile and park the bus in a bamboo thicket. The entire ride was apparently so silent that it added to the pure horror of it. The bus was hidden near the Chowchilla River, and 12 kids were ushered into the white van that was following the bus. Ray and the other 14 kids got into the back of the second van that was waiting at the location, this one green. There was a partition separating the driver's seat to the back of the van, and all the windows were sealed. Ed and all the kids sat in the backs of these vans for 11 whole hours, in the pitch black and extreme heats, all the while scared for their lives, not knowing what was going to happen next. Some of the older kids started to sing songs to try to lighten the incredibly horrible setting and make the younger kids feel better, songs like If You're Happy and You Know It. Meanwhile, back in town, it only took 15 minutes after the bus not showing up that parents began to wonder what was going on. That's how punctual Ed always was. Within the hour, the missing bus was being talked about on the local news stations. Parents helped police by tracing the route the bus usually took, and by that evening, they found the abandoned bus. Within hours, 30 FBI agents arrived on the scene, and an intense investigation was underway to find the kids and Ed. Late that night, the vans finally arrive at a rock quarry 100 miles away in Livermore, 3:30 in the morning, at which point Ed had been awake for 24 hours. The back doors of the van swing open and 2 guys are waiting. Ed is the first one out. He's handed a flashlight and then told to strip and then go down a hole with a ladder in it. Above ground, roll call is being taken for the children, and their names are written as they're made to leave the bus one by one. Then they're stripped and sent to join Ed down the ladder into what was referred to as the hole, which turned out to be an old moving van, which had been placed in a large dugout hole 12 feet underground. Ed immediately worried that the ceiling would cave in or that they'd suffocate. However, there were 2 air shafts, hoses that ran above ground to a tree. There were also some mattresses on the ground and a pathetic amount of necessities. Wonder Bread, peanut butter, potato chips, water jugs, and some holes carved for toilets. After all the kids were inside, one of the captors said, "We'll be back for you." Then a steel plate slid over the entrance and was weighted down by something. They of course begged to be let out, and many of the younger children screamed. Then they heard repeated thumps on top of the van. They couldn't see it, but their captors were shoveling dirt on top of the van, burying them alive. Panic ensued in the trailer when it was realized what was happening. Ed tried his best to keep everybody calm. Ed and Michael Marshall, the oldest kid in the group, who was 14, started to push at the lid to try and open it, but it was pointless. So by now, Ed instructed everyone to eat and get some rest. 12 hours later, the food was all already consumed, and the ventilation system that was keeping the van cool stopped working, and the hot July air started to fill the tight space. On top of that, the roof of the van started to cave in, and Ed knew time was very limited. The survivors, now adults, recount that around this time, as the walls and ceiling of the van were caving in and there was no food left, that they were starting to realize they wouldn't likely make it out of this alive. Ed and Michael started to pile up the mattresses in the trailer to get to the roof, which had been covered with a heavy sheet of metal and weighted down with 2 100-pound industrial batteries. After hours of effort, Ray and Michael wedged the lid open with a piece of wood and moved the batteries. They then dug away the remainder of the debris blocking the entrance. 16 hours after they had entered the van, the group emerged and walked to the quarry's guard shack, where a security guard called the police. Ed and the children were brought to a nearby jail, where they were fed and interviewed by police. So the captors were 3 men, Frederick Newall Woods, James Schoenfeld, and his brother Richard. Frederick's family owned the quarry that the van was buried at. The 3 men were finding themselves in financial struggles, so they planned to hijack the bus and demand a $5 million ransom to release the group. The men would flee when they saw the group escaped though, but they were found after a 2-week manhunt. They were found guilty and sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. Richard Schoenfeld was released in 2012, and James Schoenfeld was paroled on August 7, 2015. Frederick Woods was denied parole 15 times because he owned the quarry. However, in March of this year, he was granted parole as well. Rightfully so, people of Chowchilla and people around the world were sickened at the fact that the 3 men who committed this kind of monstrous act could ever roam the streets again. If Michael and Ed hadn't stepped up and dug the group out of that van, they likely would not have survived. Ed Ray died at 91 in May 17th of 2012, but he is still to this day remembered as a hero. What you just heard may perhaps be the most well-known near tragedy to happen to a school bus full of children. However, it's a big world, and there are unfortunately many other horrific events that don't end up on the news. Then 14-year-old Donald, who wished to have his last name left out, was a student at a high school in Virginia and a member of the school's band. The bus driver's name was Robert, but everyone called him Bob. Like Ed Ray, he also seemed to enjoy his job and enjoyed the company of the students he drove, albeit these students were a little older. On October 20th of 1995, Bob was driving a class of band students to and from their field trip. Donald was in this bus. The festival they went to ended late at night, around 10, and the drive back to the school where the students would be dropped off was a 45-minute drive away. The bus was on Route 58, a highway that runs through Virginia. Given the rural setting, there were basically no other cars on the road, but even when one car was relatively close to the back of the bus, it wasn't any cause for alarm at first. But when the car would start to tailgate the bus, instead of simply going around it, especially when the bus and the car were the only vehicles in sight, the students near the back of the bus started to realize and discuss amongst themselves how strange it was. Bob the bus driver would switch into the left lane to get the driver off his ass, and all the kids watched as the car floored it past the bus in the right lane. Some kids shouting things out the windows, to which the chaperone on the bus told the kids to knock it off. Donald recalls thinking the car was gone and it was just some aggressive late-night driver, when suddenly the bus slammed on the brakes so hard that everybody was slightly lifted from their seats, and there was an ear-piercing shriek from the brakes. The bus came to a halt on the middle of the highway, and Bob told everyone to remain calm. The bus went into reverse for a few moments, then back in drive to another halt. Bob shouted at everybody on board the bus to keep quiet and don't panic. And hearing those words made Donald, along with his friends he was sitting with, and every other student on the bus whisper amongst themselves nervously. There was shouting from outside the bus from multiple men's voices. Then the bus doors opened, and two men wearing black pullover masks armed with handguns came on board, yelling at everyone on the bus to shut up in response to a few students near the front screaming. One of the men with the guns announced to the entire bus to empty their wallets of all cash and take any jewelry off and to give it to them. They went row to row with their guns pointed at the kids, as each student took out their wallets and placed whatever small amounts of money broke high school students could be carrying in their wallets into the plastic bag the guy was holding, and the girls would take off their jewelry. Some students would scream as the gun was pointed in their faces, which would be a natural reaction for some. Donald described the moment he had a gun pointed at his head at 14 as emotionally traumatizing, that he felt his entire existence would end if he moved or looked at the guy the wrong way. The men didn't even make it to the back of the bus before they decided to leave in a hurry, most likely panicked that other cars would pass by and stop. The car floored it away down Route 58 with its lights off. Its license plates had been covered, indicating it was a planned attack, if the guns and masks weren't already indication enough. Everyone on board made it home okay, just most of the students, as well as Bob and the chaperone, had been robbed. Unfortunately, bus robberies are a common thing though, and while most probably aren't caught on video, what you're about to see was. A school bus traveling along the N4 in Whitbank one Friday night this past February was attacked by armed robbers. The teachers did not know it at the time, but the robbers had laid out rocks on the highway, intending to cause damage to vehicles so that the drivers would stop and the robbers could steal from them at gunpoint. The bus was carrying 4 teachers and the driver. There were no pupils in the vehicle. They were traveling back to the school after an athletics meeting when they hit the rocks and ruptured a tire. There were 3 robbers. 2 were armed with guns and 1 with a knife.
I need phone. Okay, yes, you can take it. Give me a phone. Why? Give me a phone. Where is that your car?
The assailants stole cell phones, cash, jewelry, and a smartwatch. The bus driver was hit in the face with a gun and sustained a minor jaw injury, but that was the only injury. The robbers then fled the scene, and eventually a tow truck later pulled over to assist. One of the teachers borrowed the tow truck driver's phone and called her fiancé, who notified the authorities. Police soon arrived, and an investigation began. The robbers have still not been identified. Since buses can carry a lot of people, depending on the intent of the people looking to target them, they may see extra dollar signs just based on the amount of people on board alone. Even though you don't often hear about these things happening on the news, they do happen. In such situations where people are armed with guns, it's always best to just comply with their orders. It said the dress is on the bed in the bedroom if I want to go look at it. I looked into the dark bedroom, and there was no dress on the bed. I was 17 getting ready for prom. Girls have to find a nice dress that they're going to keep. So I contacted the number listed on the listing. I texted Alex, and then I went to ring the doorbell. The door opened, and instead of some young girl around my age opening the door, it was an actual grown man, like 50 years old. The living room was dark and kind of messy. Then the man called out from a room for me to come inside and try the dress on. He left the room and entered the living room empty-handed.